Chapter 399. When Yichen saw this, he frowned. It was not a big deal for the general of Zhongshan County to lead the soldiers out of the city, and Yichen would not take it to heart. However, once the city gates opened, the players in the city would most likely take the opportunity to leave the city. One had to know that the special quest, the possession of absolute beauty Zhun, had attracted many players. If they left the city at this time, they would definitely see the dropped items on the battlefield. They were not the players who followed Yichen, so they did not have that much self-awareness. Once they saw the good items on the ground, they would definitely be tempted and try to snatch them. After all, the battlefield was too big and the items were scattered everywhere. This was very beneficial for the players to snatch the spoils of war. The players were afraid of Yichen, but they were not afraid of Yichen's subordinates. As long as they did not die in the hands of Yichen, they were not worried about dying in the real world. For the players, if they could snatch good skills and equipment, dying once and losing 10 levels was not a problem at all. As for the reason, it was very simple. Skills were the key to becoming strong, and equipment was the foundation of killing monsters. With good skills, one would have a chance to break through the innate realm and get rid of the identity of a weakling. With good equipment, one would be able to kill monsters more effectively, level up quickly, become stronger, and get rid of the identity of a weakling. Only by becoming strong would one be safe in the real world and obtain all kinds of benefits like other strong people. For example, women, wealth, treasures, and so on. What they wanted depended on how greedy they were. However, there is no doubt that most people were despicable, greedy, and despicable. Because in the world, after the meteor fell, humans were no longer restrained, and everything returned to its original state. This also caused the despicable and dark side in people's hearts to be completely released, unreservedly released. Everyone wanted to have everything. Everyone wanted to dominate a region. Everyone wanted to be invincible. In order to become strong, they would do anything. Therefore, if the players in the city saw the spoils of war on the battlefield, they would definitely snatch them, because there was a chance, and the chance was very high. Thinking of this, Yichen patted the Pegasus Xiao Jin's head. Nay! A thunderous roar sounded instantly. In the next second, the Pegasus Xiao Jin rushed towards the city gate. Its speed was extremely fast. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, it arrived at the city gate. Chu Yi and Gao Lan were in the middle of gathering the city guards of Zhongshan County. When they saw Yichen's sudden appearance, they were stunned. They hadn't expected Yichen to arrive here so quickly. After coming back to their senses, the two of them hurriedly got down on one knee and loudly bowed. This commoner, Chu Yi Gaolan, pays respect to the great general of agile cavalry. Greetings, general of agile cavalry. The city guards of Zhongshan County hurriedly knelt on one knee and saluted loudly. When Yichen heard this, he was stunned. Then his eyes widened. How could Yichen not know who Chu Yi and Gaolan were? One of them was the founder of the Xiandang Death Soldiers, while the other was one of the 4 court pillars of Hebei. They were both true, first-rate historical generals. Chu Yi, Gaolan. Who would have thought that the ones guarding the city would be the two of them? They hadn't followed Yuan Shao yet. Thinking of this, Yichen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Then, he looked at Chu Yi and Gaolan and said, "The two of you are not bad. You were able to withstand Zhang Liang's attack. You are indeed extraordinary." When Chu Yi and Gaolan heard this, they were immediately overjoyed. Being praised by Yichen meant that their chances of following Yichen had greatly increased. Moreover, Yichen didn't doubt or question them because they called themselves commoners. After all, their identity as commoners had clearly told Yichen that they didn't have an official position. In the end, they were able to lead the troops here because they were privately appointed as city guards. However, Yichen didn't blame them for this at all. This meant that Yichen didn't take this seriously at all. This was undoubtedly what Chu Yi and Gao Lan wanted to see the most. The two of them looked at each other, then looked at Yichen and bowed in unison. General of the Imperial Cavalry, without the sacrifice of all the soldiers in Zhongshan County and without Brother Yuanhao's sacrifice, the two of us couldn't have withstood the attack of the Golden Turban Army. When Yichen heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned. Yuan Hao, the one with the surname Yuan Hao in the Three Kingdoms, seemed to be Tian Feng. When he thought of this, Yichen's eyes suddenly widened. Damn it! He didn't expect that Tian Feng hadn't followed Yuan Shao yet. When he thought of this, Yichen's eyes flashed and he said, "The fact that you were able to resist the Golden Turban Army is enough to prove your courage and talent." When Yichen said this, he looked at the two of them and then asked, "Samsara City is in need of talents. Both of you are rare talents. Are you willing to follow me?" When Chu, Yi, and Gao Lan heard this, they were overjoyed. They bowed without hesitation and said, "Chu, Yi, Gao Lan, greets my lord." They originally wanted to follow Yi Chun. Now that Yi Chun took the initiative to ask them, how could they refuse? Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for obtaining the loyalty of a first-class historical general, Chu Yi. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for obtaining the loyalty of a first-class historical general, Gao Lan. When the system's notification ended, Yi Chun smiled. He dismounted from his horse and walked quickly to Gao Lan and Chu Yi to help them up. Looking at the two of them, Yi Chun said solemnly, "From now on, Gao Lan will be the 9th general of Samsara City, commanding 100,000 soldiers. Chu Yi will be the 10th general of Samsara City, commanding 100,000 soldiers." When Yichen finished speaking, Gao Lan and Chu Yi were both stunned. They never thought that Yi Chun would give them the position of general of Samsara City, commanding 100,000 soldiers at once. How could they not know what kind of existence the Samsara City army was? When they were on the city wall, they saw with their own eyes the entire process of the Samsara City army clearing out the Golden Turban Army. That was an extremely elite and well-equipped army. Even the Great Han Empire did not have such an army. Now, they were the generals of such an elite army. How could they not be excited? How could they not be excited? For them, this not only meant that they were recognized, but it also meant that Yi Chun trusted them. Otherwise, why would he give them the position of general of Samsara City? The two of them tried hard to calm their violently beating hearts. Then, with a bang, they knelt down on one knee and said loudly, "Gao Lan, Chu Yi, swears to follow my lord to death. If I break this oath, may the heavens and earth destroy me." Ding! Gao Lan's loyalty +10, advancing to die hard loyal. Ding! Chu Yi's loyalty +10, advancing to die hard loyal. When the system's notification ended, Yi Chun smiled. At this moment, a group of players rushed out from the city. The players, who were originally excited, were suddenly stunned. Then with a swoosh sound, they stopped in their tracks. F***CK. Why is Yi Chun blocking the entrance? A player exclaimed. Chapter 400. When Gao Lan and Chu Yi heard this, they were enraged and shouted, "How dare you!" They had just followed Yi Chun and were put in an important position by him. Now, someone was calling out Yi Chun's name in front of them. It was extremely rude. How could they tolerate this? In the next second, Gao Lan and Chu Yi turned around and kicked the player who shouted. Bang, bang. Two sounds were heard. The player who was still looking at them with a disgusted expression was kicked back to Zhongshan County. The player who was kicked back spat out a mouthful of blood. Then his eyes rolled back and he turned into a white light and was revived. The players at the city gate and the players inside the city who saw this scene all sucked in a breath of cold air. They didn't expect that the player would be kicked to death by the general of Zhongshan County as soon as he opened his mouth. And the reason was because of what this player had said. At this moment, a world announcement was heard. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for being the 8th person to obtain the loyalty of the first-rate historical general, Chu Yi. Player Yi Chun is rewarded with 10 million gold taels. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for being the 9th person to obtain the loyalty of the first-rate historical general, Yi Chun. Player Yi Chun is rewarded with 10 million gold taels. The world announcement was repeated 3 times, and the world channel exploded. Mother Kerr, is there any justice in this world? How long has it been? He just killed Zhang Liang, snatched Jinju, and reaped so many benefits. Now, he's taking in Chu, Yi, and Gaolon. How can others survive? Mother of asterisk Kerr, that's right. You can't go overboard. Mother of asterisk Kerr, you're the #1 person in the human race. You can't just take all the benefits. You're forcing everyone to be your enemy. That's right. He's gone overboard. He's taken in so many historical generals. They're either super or first-rate. Mother of asterisk Kerr, if you keep taking them in, all the lords will unite against you. TSK, a bunch of idiots. You talk as if you're so awesome. Why don't you take a piss and look in the mirror? Look at yourselves. Do you think you're worthy of being Boss Yi Chen's enemy? Dream on. That's right. If Boss Yi Chen wants to deal with you, he can do it in a matter of minutes. Besides, Boss Yi Chen can take in historical figures and obtain good things. That's Boss Yi Chen's ability. What's the point of being jealous? If you're awesome, go fight for yourselves. What's the point of talking to these idiots? They're a bunch of morons. They don't have the ability, so they're blaming Boss Yi Chen. They're too shameless. The World Channel was in an uproar and was constantly being updated. Yi Chen glanced at it and then smiled coldly. The Lord players on the World Channel were envious, as always. However, things were a little different this time. Someone had started stirring up trouble, inciting the other lords to deal with Yi Chen. That was because Yi Chen had obtained too many good things. It was so many that it made people's eyes red with envy. What the lords found most intolerable was that Yi Chen had taken in historical figures as easily as drinking water. Therefore, someone started stirring up trouble, inciting the other lords to join forces and deal with Yi Chen. The result was that countless people responded. This was not a good thing for Yi Chen. Of course, Yi Chen was not worried about this. At this moment, Yi Chen could completely ignore all the players in the novice area of the Three Kingdoms, even if they joined forces. The strength of Samsara City was not something that these players could understand. Moreover, as time passed, Samsara City would become stronger and more terrifying. Moreover, even if someone stirred up trouble and incited the other lords to join forces, it was impossible for them to gather together to deal with Yi Chen at this time. At this moment, there were golden scarves everywhere in the Great Han Dynasty. There were shifters everywhere. If they dared to gather together, they would be doing what the shifters wanted. At that time, they would definitely attract a large number of shifters. At that time, it would be useless even if they cried and begged for mercy. Of course, they could not really join forces. As for the reason, it was very simple. No one was stupid enough to fight Yi Chen head-on, and no one was stupid enough to stand out. How could the players not know how terrifying Yi Chen and Samsara City's army were? Therefore, they wantonly attacked Yi Chen on the World Channel, inciting others to fight against Yi Chen. Of course, these players also wanted to scare Yi Chen. They wanted Yi Chen to see how many people in this world were dissatisfied with Yi Chen. They wanted Yi Chen to understand one thing. If he wanted to play the game properly, he should not monopolize it. Otherwise, it would cause public anger. Yi Chen naturally knew what the players were thinking. However, to Yi Chen, no matter how much nonsense the players spouted, Yi Chen would ignore it. If they did not attack, Yi Chen would not care. If they dared to attack, Yi Chen would only choose one path: kill without mercy. No matter how many people there were, whether they were male or female, as long as they were enemies, Yi Chen would not let any of them off. As for the players in the World Channel who spoke up for Yi Chen and mocked the lords, they were just following Yi Chen to gain benefits. It was not strange for them to speak up for Yi Chen. It would be strange if they did not speak up for Yi Chen. Of course, Yi Chen would not be moved by this. He would not help these players or loosen the restrictions on them. Because of this, Yi Chen and these players were just taking what they needed and benefiting from each other. If Yi Chen could not bring them benefits, 99% of them would not speak up for Yi Chen. Yi Chen was well aware of this. Naturally, he would not have a good impression of these players because of this. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, sighs could be heard from the city gate. The sighs were filled with helplessness, regret, and conflict. Yi Chen looked at the regretful players and curled his lips in disdain. How could Yi Chen not know why they were regretting? It was because after they heard the World Channel announcement and confirmed Gao Lan and Chu Yi's identities, they realized something. They had missed out on Gao Lan and Chu Yi. Just a moment ago, they had the chance to meet Gao Lan and Chu Yi. But no one would have thought that Gao Lan and Chu Yi were the defending generals of Zhongshan County. If they had known Gao Lan and Chu Yi's identities, they would have tried to get close to them. How could they have allowed Gao Lan and Chu Yi to leave the city and be accepted by Yi Chun? This was what the players at the city gate were thinking. However, these players were obviously overthinking. Even if they knew that the defending generals of Zhongshan County were Gao Lan and Chu Yi, they would not be able to subdue them. The reason was simple. They did not have an official position, they did not have enough reputation, and their territory was too weak. The possibility of the historical generals choosing such a lord as their lord was close to zero. Unless they were like Yi Chun and had a god-level village creation token as their territory, they would have a chance of subduing some historical figures. But this was just a hypothetical situation. In reality, it did not exist. There was only one god-level village creation token, and it belonged to Yi Chun. Therefore, it was impossible for them to subdue Gao Lan and Chu Yi. Just as Yi Chun thought of this, a middle-aged man walked out from the crowd and bowed to Yi Chun. "Lord Governor, we would like to leave the city. Please make it easy for us." This middle-aged man obviously had some understanding of this world and knew the importance of seniority. He often bowed like this. Otherwise, he would not have bowed so naturally. When Yi Chun heard this, he glanced at the middle-aged man and said, "It's not time yet." "Lord Governor, what do you mean? Are we not allowed to leave the city to kill the Golden Scarf rebels?" The middle-aged man's expression changed slightly as he asked. The moment he said this, the players at the city gate looked at each other and echoed his words. "Yes, Lord Governor, we are all citizens of the Great Han Empire. It's not against the law to leave the city. Moreover, we're going to kill the Golden Scarf rebels. Even His Majesty will praise us. Lord Governor, you are preventing us from serving His Majesty. If His Majesty finds out, Lord Governor will be in danger." The players used the honorific Lord Governor and pledged their loyalty to the Great Han Empire and Luhong. Moreover, they spoke with sincerity. No matter how one looked at them, they were the good citizens of the Great Han Empire and the good men of the Great Han Empire. Yi Chun looked at the players at the city gate and smiled coldly. He waved his right hand, and the Godslayer appeared. If Yi Chun was not sure of the players' motives before, he was 100% sure of one thing now. The players wanted to leave the city for the spoils of war on the battlefield. Killing the Golden Scarf rebels was just an excuse. They did not need to kill the Golden Scarf rebels because they would be wiped out by the Samsara City army. Moreover, they knew that Yi Chun would not allow them to kill the Golden Scarf rebels outside the city. They were all players. No one would give away their benefits to others. Yi Chun would not, and neither would the players at the city gate. However, the players wanted to leave the city to kill the Golden Scarf rebels. They made it sound so righteous. The truth was obvious. They wanted to use words to force Yi Chun to let them leave the city. If Yi Chun did not let them go, he would be disloyal to the Great Han Empire and Luhong. Their ideas were good and targeted, but they clearly misunderstood one thing. Reputation was important to Yi Chun, but that was only to the natives of this world. No matter what the players did or what Yi Chun did, it would not affect Yi Chun's reputation at all. If the players were natives of this world, Yi Chun might consider it. However, they were not natives of this world. They were players without any official positions. For such an existence, Yi Chun was God. No matter what Yi Chun did, nothing would happen. Even if he killed the players, it would not affect Yi Chun at all. Because Yi Chun was the great general of the cavalry of the Great Han Empire and the governor of Yuzhou. The reason was simple and crude. When the players at the city gate saw Yi Chun summon the Godslayer, they could not help but shudder and quickly shut their mouths. How could they not know what the Godslayer was? If they were hit by it, their equipment would be destroyed and they might even die. When the middle-aged man saw this, his pupils constricted. He bowed again and asked, "Lord Governor, what is the meaning of this?" When Yi Chun heard this, he narrowed his eyes and stabbed the Godslayer with his right hand without hesitation. Puchi! A sound was heard. The The middle-aged man was instantly pierced. At this moment, the Godslayer flashed, and the middle-aged man's soul was instantly devoured. Yichen looked at the middle-aged man and curled his lips in disdain. He then pulled back the Godslayer and looked at the players of the city gate. When the players at the city gate saw this, their hearts trembled. Wait for a while, it's okay. Someone suddenly laughed and said. Chapter 4:01. Yes, it doesn't matter if we wait. Everyone, let's go. Someone nodded and shouted. Yes, let's go. The players at the city gate pretended that nothing had happened and returned to Zhongshan City. Yichen looked at the leaving players and smiled coldly. These players were clearly afraid of death. To be more precise, they were afraid of dying in the real world. If there was no threat in this area, these players would not be afraid of Yichen. Even if the Samsara City army blocked the gate, they would still dare to charge in, let alone Yichen. Because if they died, they would only lose a level. Once they charged out, they would be able to get good techniques and equipment. Unfortunately, this was all a hypothesis. It did not exist. The chances of being killed by Yichen in the real world were very high. These players knew this, so no one was willing to bet on it. Just as Yichen thought of this, he heard a series of battle cries from behind him. The voices clearly came from players, and many of them were female. Hearing this, Yichen immediately frowned and turned around to look. In the next second, Yichen narrowed his eyes, and a cold light flashed in them. Beauty's Alliance was fighting with a group of tens of thousands of players outside the battlefield. From their position, it was clear that Beauty's Alliance was trying to stop the players from entering the battlefield. As for the purpose of stopping them, it was to prevent them from taking advantage of the chaos to steal the equipment and techniques on the battlefield. You want to take advantage of me? How bold. Thinking of this, Yichen smiled coldly. With a thought, the cosmic bow and sky quake arrow appeared and were caught in Yichen's hand. In the next second, Yichen pulled the bowstring with his right hand and let go. Clang! The 3 heaven-shaking arrows instantly left the bowstring, and then turned into shooting stars that flashed and disappeared. Beauty's Alliance was retreating outside the battlefield. At this moment, 3 white lights flashed and pierced through the bodies of the players fighting with Beauty's Alliance. 2 breaths later, the battlefield quieted down. While the members of Beauty's Alliance were puzzled, a series of body explosions sounded. Pung, pung, pung. The group of players who had been proud and arrogant just a moment ago, without exception, all of their bodies exploded and died. What's going on? Someone shouted in shock. I think I saw a white light. Someone said uncertainly. Beauty's Alliance leader Li Mengyao turned around and looked at the Zhongshan City gate. It's Yichen. Okay, let's focus. Don't let others take advantage of this. If we can't do such a small thing, then we're not worthy of his help. The moment Li Mengyao's words, the Beauty's Alliance members, and they looked at Yichen at the Zhongshan City gate. At this moment, they all had the same thought. Yichen is so strong, St. Even in the real world, in the safe city they were in, Yichen had wiped out the Yanhuang Alliance, but they had only heard about it. None of them had seen it with their own eyes. And now they had seen it. More accurately, they had seen the result of Yichen's attack. He had instantly killed tens of thousands of players. Such a strong person was undoubtedly the person they wanted to rely on the most. Even if they could form a relationship with him, it would be great. As long as they could live under the protection of Yichen, they had nothing to be afraid of in the real world. Unfortunately, Yichen did not even bother about them. Thinking about this, the Beauty's Alliance members all revealed helpless expressions. Don't just stand there, be alert. Li Mengyao looked at the conflicted and helpless expressions of her subordinates and sighed helplessly. She then scolded, "Yes, Sister Yao Yao." When the Beauty's Alliance members heard this, they all threw their fantasies to the back of their heads and replied in unison. Zhongshan Prefecture, City Gate. Yichen was about to put away his heaven-shaking bow and heaven-shaking arrow when Yichen's eyes opened wide. He then looked at the city walls of Zhongshan Prefecture. He saw a middle-aged man with a celestial aura suddenly appear on the city walls. The moment he saw the man, Yichen knocked an arrow on his bow without hesitation and shot at him. Zheng! The heaven-shaking arrow instantly left the bow and disappeared in a flash. "Kid, you're too rude." A shocked exclamation sounded out. In the next second, the man disappeared. The heaven-shaking arrow that instantly descended mist. Seeing this, Yi Chen's eyes squinted. He then looked at Gao Lan and Chu Yi and hollered, "The two of you return to the city and maintain law and order. No matter who it is, as long as they break the law, no matter how serious the crime is, kill them. Also, send troops to protect the Zhen family and prevent anyone from getting close." Yi Chen made this decision in order to prevent the players in Zhongshan County from having failed to leave the city and turning their attention to Zhongshan County. For example, robbing shops, robbing the rich merchants in the city, and even directly targeting the Zhen clan. After all, Zhan Jusei had already been unsealed and recognized Yi Chen as her master. Moreover, she had suddenly turned 16 years old. If the players really wanted to do something bad, they might really have designs on the Zhen family. More accurately, they had designs on Zhan Jusei. If they could snatch her, they would. If they could not, they would just kill her. After all, Yi Chen had not entered the city yet. When Gao Lan and Chu Yi heard this, they immediately recovered from their shock. They then hurriedly bowed and said, "Lord, that demon." They were naturally worried about Yi Chen's safety because the man who suddenly appeared was too strange. Not only did he appear on the city walls, he could also disappear into thin air. When Yi Chen heard this, he smiled and said, "It's not a big deal. It's just a small trick. Quickly enter the city." "Lord, please be careful. We will enter the city now." When Gao Lan and Chu Yi heard this, they struggled for a moment before bowing together. Yi Chen nodded and said, "Go." "Yes, Lord." When Gao Lan and Chu Yi heard this, they bowed together and led the city guards of Zhongshan County into the city. At this moment, Yi Chen directly turned around and looked 5 meters in front of him. Then he asked Nanhua, "Yuji, where's Wasi?" As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, the space in front of Yi Chen suddenly distorted, and a middle-aged man suddenly appeared. Yi Chen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he saw him. This person's cultivation level had reached the mortal evolution state. However, he was not sealed by this world. Hence, when Yi Chen shot that arrow just now, he used magic to dodge it. In fact, Yi Chen did not lock onto him with his spirit sense just now. Otherwise, he would be dead for sure. The heaven and earth bow was not some cabbage that could be easily dodged. Of course, there was a prerequisite. Yi Chen's spirit sense had to be stronger than the man and be able to lock onto him. The truth was already very obvious. Yi Chen's spirit sense was stronger. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to discover the middle-aged man who was invisible. At this moment, the middle-aged man looked at Yi Chen with a face full of cold sweat. Then, he bowed solemnly and said, "Nanhua greets the General of Agile Cavalry. Thank you, General of Agile Cavalry, for your mercy." Chapter 402. Then, the middle-aged man's appearance changed. He had white hair, blue eyes, and a youthful face. He held a cane. It was clear that the current Nanhua was his true appearance. When Yi Chen saw this, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "You came here for the Taiping technique." The Taiping technique had 3 scrolls. Zhang Zhu, Zhang Bao, and Zhang Liang each had 1 scroll. The person who gave him the Taiping technique was Yi Chen's Nanhua, or Nanhua Old Immortal. Of course, Old Immortal was just a title given to them by the world because they had extraordinary abilities. However, the truth was that Nanhua, Zhuixi, and Yuji were all mortal evolution states. They hadn't reached the immortal level. Nanhua Old Immortal smiled and said, No. Then, why did you come here? To get revenge for Zhang Liang?" Yi Chen looked at Nanhua Old Immortal and asked. Hearing this, the Nanhua Old Immortal smiled and said, "Zhang Zhu, Zhang Bao, and Zhang Liang aren't master and disciple. Why would I seek revenge for them?" The Nanhua Old Immortal glanced at Yi Chen and continued, "That's right. This old Taoist has come here for the human race." When Yi Chen heard this, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and ask, "Is he from the human race?" Nanhua, old immortal, nodded heavily, then bowed and said, "That's right. The world is in chaos, and the demon race is invading. If the fate of the human race is taken, everything will be over. However, everything has a chance of survival. As long as General Biaoqi can protect His Majesty, the demon race won't be able to take the fate of the human race. By then, the human race will still be the main character of the world." As soon as the Nanhua old immortal finished speaking, the system notification sounded. Ding! Mythical unique mission, Battle of Fate, triggered. Do you accept? When Yichen heard this, he was stunned. Yichen didn't expect Nanhua old immortal to trigger a mythical unique mission. This was because no one had triggered this mission in Yichen's previous life. A mythical grade unique quest. Who would have thought that it would actually be a mythical grade unique quest? Anyone could accept a mythical quest, but with the addition of a unique quest, only one person could accept it. To put it simply, once Yichen accepted the mythical unique quest of the Battle of Providence, only Yichen could complete it. Even if others happened to participate in this mission and used all their strength, they would not be able to obtain a single reward. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that mythical level unique missions had the most generous rewards among all the missions. Of course, it was also the most dangerous. However, this danger only applied to other players. It didn't apply to Yichen at all. Yichen's strength and the power of Samsara City were not something that the demon tribe in the beginner's area of the Three Kingdoms could contend against. Looks like it was because I killed Zhang Liang and stole the Taiping technique scroll that attracted the Nanhua old deity and activated this mythical level unique quest. Thinking of this, Yichen's eyes widened, and he made his choice without hesitation. Accept. Ding. The mythical level unique quest, Battle of Providence, has been activated. Ding. Player Yichen, please eliminate all the demon tribes in the world within a month. If you succeed, you will be rewarded with innate attribute points x 300, lottery x1, recruitment order, heaven level, x100, cauldron of heaven and earth x1. If you fail, your level will be reduced by 100, your innate attribute points will be reduced by 300, 3 pieces of equipment will be randomly dropped, and your territory level will be reduced by 3 to 5 levels. As soon as the system's notification ended, Yichen's eyes widened. Holy shit! Yichen knew that mythical level unique quests had generous rewards, but Yichen did not expect the rewards to be this generous. Needless to say, the innate attribute points were something that Yichen had always wanted. The more, the better. Lottery. Ever since Yichen obtained the Great Luck attribute, he had never gotten anything bad from the lottery. Needless to say, the more, the better. The recruitment order, heaven level, could be used to recruit 100,000 soldiers. 100 heaven-level recruitment orders could provide Yichen with 10 million soldiers. Needless to say, it was not bad, and the Cauldron of Heaven and Earth was undoubtedly the best of all the rewards. Yichen did not expect that the Cauldron of Heaven and Earth would be one of the rewards. This was a primordial treasure. Its function was to return to the origin, improve the level and quality of treasures and weapons, and transform acquired to innate. With this, Yichen would be able to turn the acquired treasures and acquired weapons into innate treasures. To put it simply, after Yichen ascended, he did not have to worry about the weapons of his subordinates at all. All of them could obtain primordial spiritual treasures. Even in the novice area of the Three Kingdoms, Yichen could greatly improve the quality of the soldiers' equipment in Samsara City. It would not be a problem even if the quality of the soldiers' equipment broke through the limit of the mortal world. At the thought of getting the Cauldron of Heaven and Earth after completing the quest, Yichen suddenly felt very happy. As for the time limit and the punishment for failure, Yichen did not care at all. For Yichen, it was not a problem to wipe out all the monsters in the Han Dynasty within a month. Even if the premise was to destroy the Golden Turban and prevent the monsters from constantly reviving and breaking into the human world, it was not a problem for Yichen. As soon as Yichen finished thinking, Nanhua Elder Deity bowed with a smile and said, "Since the Grand Cavalry Commander has decided, since the Great General of Agile Cavalry has made the decision, my task is completed. I'll take my leave now. Obviously, Nanhua Elder Deity knew Yi Chen's decision after Yi Chen made his choice. Otherwise, he would have waited for Yi Chen to give him an answer. When Yi Chen heard this, he nodded with a smile and said, "Have a safe trip." Hearing this, the Nanhua Old Immortal smiled and bowed again, then turned and left. After a few steps, he disappeared without a trace. Looking in the direction where Nanhua Elder Deity left, Yi Chen raised his eyebrows. I didn't expect that idiot Zhang Liang to come to Zhongshan County to steal Zhan Jueshua. And not only was he killed by me, he even gave me a mythical level unique mission for free. Not bad. Not bad thinking of this. Yi Chen smirked and looked at the deep pit under the city wall. There were 150,000 golden scarf strongmen trapped there. However, at this moment, the 150,000 golden scarf strongmen were being wiped out by the Samsara Legion. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of equipment dropping was still ringing out. Hearing the sounds of equipment dropping, Yi Chen nodded in satisfaction. He then shouted, "Let's go." After killing them, clean them up. 150,000 Golden Turban warriors could provide Yi Chen with at least 50,000 saint-level techniques. Even if Yi Chen didn't do it, it would still be enough. Of course, if Yi Chen did it, this number would definitely skyrocket. However, the Samsara Legion was only one step away from becoming a saint-level general. How could Yi Chen restrict the rapid growth of the Samsara Legion just because of some techniques? After all, the Golden Turban warriors weren't the only ones who could drop saint-level techniques. The demons were the ones who had the most. Soon, Yi Chen would go to Luoyang. That was the main battlefield against the demons. By then, billions of demons would gather in Luoyang. They would cover the sky and earth. The stronger the Samsara Legion was, the more powerful the White Tiger Formation and the Vermilion Bird Formation would be. This way, they could kill more demons and reduce the danger to the Samsara City Army to the minimum. After all, only a portion of the Samsara City Army was strong. Most of them hadn't reached the Khanate level yet. It would be dangerous for them to face countless demons. Yi Chen wouldn't let his soldiers risk their lives for nothing. Because of this, Yi Chen didn't kill the Golden Turban warriors himself. "Yes, Lord. My Lord." A shout came from the deep pit. Yi Chen smiled when he heard this. At this moment, a respectful greeting came from behind Yi Chen. Tian Feng and Tian Yuanhao of Ji Province greet the General of Agile Cavalry. Chapter 403. Hearing this, Yi Chen raised his eyebrows and turned to look at Tian Feng. Unexpectedly, before Yi Chen could speak, Tian Feng bowed again and said, "Tian Feng, Tian Yuanhao, please accept us, General of Agile Cavalry." As soon as Tian Feng finished his words, the system prompt sounded. Ding! First-class historical officials, Tian Feng and Tian Yuanhao, want to recognize you as their master. Do you accept? Hearing the system's notification, Yi Chen's eyes widened. Damn, do you even need to ask? Accept. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for obtaining the loyalty of first-class historical officials, Tian Feng and Tian Yuanhao. As soon as the system notification ended, Yi Chen took a few steps forward and arrived in front of Tian Feng. He then helped Tian Feng up and laughed loudly. It's a great fortune to have Yuanhao's help. Hearing Yi Chen's words, Tian Feng was delighted. He hurriedly bowed again and said, "Tian Feng and Tian Yuanhao, pay their respects to my lord." At this moment, the world announcement suddenly sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for obtaining the loyalty of first-class historical officials, Tian Feng and Tian Yuanhao. Player Yi Chen is rewarded with 10 million taels of gold. As soon as the world announcement sounded, the world channel, which was already in an uproar, exploded again. Damn, Yi Chen is cheating. How can he keep accepting people like this? There's no justice in this world. Damn, I really suspect that Yi Chen is the bastard child of this game. Damn, why does he always get the benefits? Ha ha, Boss Yi Chen is awesome. I'll ask you if you're convinced. Boss Yi Chen is mighty and domineering. He's invincible. Damn, stop wasting time. Hurry up and make a decision. If we let Yi Chen continue to develop, the world will belong to Yi Chen sooner or later. At that time, We will all have to live in the shadow of that bastard Yichun. Let's do it. The bold ones will be full, and the timid ones will starve. Kill Yichun. Count me in. And me. Yichun glanced at the world channel and curled his lips in disdain. The players who were afraid that Yichun would snatch away their benefits started to sow discord again. For a time, there were countless responses. They wanted to kill Yichun, and each and every one of them was clamoring loudly. Unfortunately, no matter how much they clamored, Yichun looked down on them. Because they were shouting so loudly, there were very few who dared to make a move now. Yichun wasn't worried at all. Moreover, even if they really dared to make a move, Yichun was not afraid. To Yichun, they could do whatever they wanted. As long as they dared to make a move, he would just kill them. Thinking of this, Yichun's eyes narrowed as a cold light flashed in his eyes. He then stretched out his hands and helped Tianfeng up. Yichun was just about to speak when Tianfeng's face suddenly turned red and he coughed violently. Cough, cough, cough. Mouthful after mouthful of blood spurted out from Tianfeng's mouth and sprayed all over Yichun's body. Seeing this, Yichun's face changed instantly. He quickly grabbed Tianfeng's wrist with his right hand and used his divine senses to check Tianfeng's body. After a few seconds, Yichun heaved a sigh of relief. He waved his right hand, and a stone appeared in Yichun's hand. After Yichun was covered in blood, Tianfeng, who had been secretly observing Yichun, saw the stone that suddenly appeared and was stunned. He then asked, "My lord, this is Two-World Stone. Are you willing to use this item?" "Yuan how?" Yichun chuckled and said. Hearing this, Tianfeng's eyes widened. He then bowed without hesitation and said, "Feng swears to follow my lord until death. If I violate this oath, may the heavens and earth destroy me." Ding! Tianfeng's loyalty +10. Advanced to loyal. When Yichun heard the system notification, he couldn't help but be stunned. He did not expect Tianfeng to be so loyal because of a Two-World Stone. In fact, Tianfeng was not loyal because of the Two-World Stone. The main reason was because of Yichun's action. When Tianfeng was coughing out blood, not only did Yichun not dodge, but he also did not show any disgust. Instead, he looked concerned and checked Tianfeng's injuries. It was such a simple matter that won Tianfeng's good impression of him. If Yichun did not take the Two-World Stone, Tianfeng would still be loyal. Taking the Two-World Stone was just a catalyst. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that Tianfeng would be 100% loyal to Yichun from now on. Even if Yichun asked Tianfeng to die, Tianfeng would not frown. Of course, Yichun would not ask Tianfeng to die. Loyal subordinates were hard to come by. Yichun would not mess around. After coming back to his senses, Yichun nodded with a smile and handed the Two-World Stone to Tianfeng. Tianfeng took the Two-World Stone and used it without hesitation. When Yichun saw this, he smiled and said, "Don't resist. I'll bring you to my world." "Yes, my lord. My lord." When Tianfeng heard this, he bowed without hesitation. Yichun nodded. Then, he grabbed Tianfeng's shoulder and moved his mind. In the next second, Yichun and Tianfeng disappeared from the gate of Zhongshan County. In the real world, in the governor's mansion of Samsara City, a ball of light appeared out of nowhere. In the next second, Tianfeng appeared in the hall. With a creak, the door of the diamond-grade gaming capsule opened. Yichun stood up in the gaming capsule and was stunned. At this moment, 5 shouts of pleasant surprise rang out. "Husband!" When Yichun heard this, he couldn't help but sigh. He then looked at Zhao Yu, Chan Wan, Kai Mei Mi Zhen, and Huang Wan who were standing next to the diamond-level gaming capsule. He said apologetically, "I'm sorry." Yichun was away on an expedition, so he naturally couldn't accompany the 5 girls all the time. Otherwise, Yichun wouldn't say that. After hearing Yichun's words, the 5 women felt warmth in their hearts and said together, "Husband, we're sorry. Husband, we don't feel wronged. We miss you, and we can come to your world anytime." Hearing this, Yichun secretly sighed, then nodded and said, "Yes. But after coming to this world, you must be alert. If there is any danger, go back to that world." "Yes." When the five women heard this, they all nodded in unison. Yichen smiled and looked at Tianfeng. Before he said anything, Tianfeng hurriedly bowed to the five women and said, Jizhou's Tianfeng and Tian Yuanhao, pay respects to the five matriarchs. Zhao Yu, Chan Wan, Kai Mei Mi Zhen, and Huang Wan smiled and nodded. Yichen smiled and left the diamond-grade gaming capsule. After a few steps, he came to Tianfeng and glanced at him. Yichen waved his right hand, and a small pool made of stalactites appeared beside Yichen. My lord, this is... Tianfeng was taken aback when he saw the small pond. However, he stopped abruptly before he could finish his sentence. 1,000-year stalactite milk. At this time, Tianfeng recognized the origin of the thing in the pool and then shouted in shock. Yes, this is the 1,000-year stalactite milk. It should be helpful to your body, Yichen said with a smile. After that, he waved his right hand, and 3 clusters of 1,000-year stalactite milk flew from the small pool to Tianfeng. My lord, this. Tianfeng looked at the 3 clusters of 1,000-year stalactite milk floating in front of him and said excitedly. Obviously, Tianfeng knew the effects of the 1,000-year stalactite milk and knew how rare it was. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so excited. Yuanhao is talented and has followed me wholeheartedly. It's only 1,000-year stalactite milk. What's there to be reluctant about? Yichen laughed and said, Feng thanks my lord for the gift. Tianfeng's expression turned solemn, and he bowed solemnly. After that, he opened his mouth and swallowed the 3 clusters of 1,000-year stalactite milk. After 10 minutes, the paleness on Tianfeng's face disappeared without a trace, and his complexion returned to normal. Recommended book, Transfiguration, God-Level Heavenly King. Chapter 404. When Yichen saw this, he immediately looked at Tianfeng's status panel. Seeing that Tianfeng's injuries had healed and even his bone structure had increased by 6 points, Yichen nodded in satisfaction. He then looked at Zhao Yu and asked, Where's Yinhu? Hearing Yichen's question, Zhao Yu smiled and said, She ate too many spirit stones. She ate too many spirit stones and is about to break through, but she didn't want to disturb her husband, so she ran outside the city lord estate. By the time she digested the spirit stones, she would be able to reach the mortal evolution state. Yichen was stunned for a moment before he smiled and said, She's still such a glutton. She's still so greedy, but that's good too. When she reaches the mortal evolution state, the samsara city will be safer. Yichen then looked at the 5 women and said, I'm going to go out soon. I'll be going back to that world first. Take care, husband. I'll send you off. Zhao Yu, Chan Wan, Kai Mei Mi Zhen, and Huang Wan nodded in unison when they heard this. Yichen looked at the 5 women and nodded. He then looked at Tianfeng and said, Yuanhao, follow me back to that world. The reason Yichen brought Tianfeng to the real world was naturally to heal Tianfeng's injuries. His injuries weren't serious, but they weren't light either. However, it would take him a few days to recover. Now that Tianfeng followed Yichen naturally wouldn't let Tianfeng continue to suffer and recover slowly. Of course, Yichen wanted Tianfeng to recover quickly so that he could bring Tianfeng to the battle. One must know that Yichen's time to clear out the Golden Scarf race and the Demon race in the Great Han Dynasty was limited to a month at most. Therefore, after Yichen dealt with the Demon race outside Luoyang, he would definitely split his forces and sweep through the entire Great Han Dynasty. At that time, if a military advisor followed him to the battle, the scales of victory would tilt towards Samsara City again. Yes, my lord. When Tianfeng heard this, he bowed without hesitation. Yichen smiled and walked to the side of the diamond-level gaming cabin. He stepped into it and lay down. When the cabin door closed, Yichen returned to the game world. At this time, Tianfeng also disappeared. Game World, 3 Kingdoms Novice Region, Zhongshan County, City Gate. Guan Er, Zhang San, Zhang He, and Gui Yi, who had already wiped out the Golden Scarf Army, arrived. Just as the 4 of them were wondering where Yichen had gone, 2 pillars of light suddenly descended. When the light pillar dissipated, Yi Chun and Tian Feng appeared in their original positions. Guan Er, Zhang San, Zhang He, and Guo Yi were all stunned. However, he didn't expect that Yi Chun had gone to the real world when he wasn't around. Although they didn't quite understand, Yi Chun was their lord. They naturally wouldn't casually ask about Yi Chun's matters. After coming back to their senses, the four of them hurriedly bowed and said, "Greetings, my lord." When Yi Chun heard this, he immediately opened his eyes. He then looked at Guo Yi, Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He and asked, "Has the Golden Scarf Army been wiped out?" "My lord, the Golden Scarf Army has been wiped out and the spoils of war have been collected." Guo Yi, Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He heard this and bowed in unison. Yi Chun nodded and then froze. There was suddenly a group of players on the battlefield. To be precise, they were players who were picking up the equipment that the Samsara City army didn't want. The time difference between the two worlds was really a headache. Yi Chun naturally thought this way because it had only been a short time in the real world, but a long time had passed in the game world. This could be seen from the sudden appearance of a large group of players picking up trash equipment on the battlefield. When Yi Chun returned to the real world, the Golden Scarf Army hadn't been wiped out yet. Thinking of this, Yi Chun sighed helplessly and then looked at Tian Feng. However, before Yi Chun could say anything, Tian Feng understood what Yi Chun meant. He stepped forward and bowed to Yi, Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He. Jilu, Tian Feng, and Tian Yuanhao greet Chancellor Guo and the three generals. It wasn't strange that Tian Feng knew Guo Yi. After all, Guo Yi had been following Yi Chun for a long time. When Yi Chun's name spread throughout the Great Han Dynasty, Guo Yi's name also spread. Of course, those who knew Guo Yi's name were mostly historical figures. Ordinary people didn't know him. As for Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He, they had just followed Yi Chun and weren't well known. Naturally, Tian Feng didn't know their origins. As soon as Tian Feng finished speaking, Guo Yi, Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He smiled and returned the greeting. Ing Chuan, Guo Yi, and Guo Fengxiao greet Brother Yuanhao. Hudong, Guan Er, and Guan Yinchang greet Brother Yuanhao. Zhua Commandery, Zhang San, and Zhang Ida greet Brother Yuanhao. Hejian, Zhang He, and Zhang He, Zhang Yi greet Brother Yuanhao. Yi Chun couldn't help but smile when he saw that his subordinates were all treating him with respect. He then turned to Guo Yi and said, "Fengxiao, explain the situation in Samsara City to Yuanhao." Yi Chun wanted to bring Tian Feng to battle. Naturally, he had to let Tian Feng understand the situation in Samsara City so that he could come up with a plan. When Guo Yi heard this, he smiled and bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty, my lord." Yi Chun nodded with a smile. Then he looked at Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He and said, "Start a fire and cook here. In 2 hours, we'll set out for Mount Chang." When Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He heard this, their eyes widened. Then they bowed and said, "Yes, my lord." When Yi Chun heard this, he chuckled and nodded. Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He bowed again and left the city gate to pass on Yi Chun's orders. Guo Yi came to Tian Feng's side and said with a smile, "Brother Yuanhao, this isn't a good place to talk. Why don't we go over there?" Guo Yi pointed to an empty space in the distance. Guo Yi said this to keep a secret. After all, many players desperately wanted to know about Samsara City. Because they knew about Samsara City, they could formulate a better plan to deal with Yi Chun. Guo Yi had followed Yi Chun for a long time. How could he not know what the players were thinking? This was the entrance to the city. Not far from the city, there were players wandering around. On the battlefield, there was a large group of players picking up trash. If Guo Yi were to explain Samsara City to Tian Feng, there was a high chance that the players would overhear. Guo Yi wouldn't do such a stupid thing. Hearing this, Tian Feng smiled and said, "Okay." After saying this, he followed Guo Yi into the distance. Yi Chun looked at Guo Yi and Tian Feng leaving and smiled. Then he looked at the huge pit at the city gate. In the next second, Yi Chun frowned. The Samsara Legion, which was supposed to be waiting at the city gate, was nowhere to be found. At this moment, The 150,000 gold-scarved strongmen trapped in the huge pit had been killed. The items they dropped were also gone. However, the Samsara Legion was not here, nor was it on the battlefield. The Samsara Legion was loyal to Yi Chun. Without Yi Chun's orders, they would not act on their own. But just now, Guan Er, Zhang San, Zhang He, and Go Yi did not react to the Samsara Legion's disappearance. Where did the Samsara Legion go? Chapter 405. At the thought of this, Yi Chun released his divine sense and instantly covered an area of 300 miles around Zhongshan Prefecture. In the next second, Yi Chun's eyes widened and he roared, "How dare you!" Following Yi Chun's roar, the murderous intent in Yi Chun's body surged out violently. In the next second, the treasure-falling coin with wings appeared in front of Yi Chun. It flapped its wings and disappeared in a flash. Nay! The thundering neigh of a warhorse was heard. Little Gold, the Pegasus, ran to Yi Chun's side in an instant. Yi Chun mounted the horse and pointed to the west. Nay! Little Gold turned around and galloped in the direction Yi Chun pointed. It was 1,000 meters away in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Little Gold was running at full speed. It was as fast as lightning. On the battlefield, Guan Er, Zhang San, Zhang He, and the army of Samsara City heard Yi Chun's roar. Their expressions changed. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Guan Er, Zhang San, Zhang He, and the army of Samsara City picked up their weapons at the same time. They were Yi Chun's subordinates and were loyal to Yi Chun. Now that someone had angered Yi Chun, they naturally wanted to chase and kill the person who angered Yi Chun. Old Guan, old Zhang, quick! The Lord has gone far away. Seeing Yi Chun disappear in a few breaths, the impatient Zhang San jumped up anxiously. He mounted his horse and was ready to chase after Yi Chun. Guan Er nodded with an ashen face and mounted his horse. At the same time, Zhang He also mounted his horse. Swoosh! The army of Samsara City also mounted their horses at this moment. Murderous intent rose in an instant. Just as Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He were about to give the order to chase after Yi Chun, Gui Yi and Tianfeng ran over. Military advisor, Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He hurriedly shouted when they saw Gui Yi running over. Gui Yi arrived next to Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He. He let out a long sigh and then looked at the three of them. Don't panic. In this world, no one can hurt the Lord. When Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He heard this, they were all stunned. Then, they recalled Yi Chun's tyrannical strength, and their suspended hearts finally calmed down a little. But military advisor, if the Lord suddenly leaves, what if? Zhang San said with some irritation. Zhang San had a fiery temper to begin with. Now that Yi Chun suddenly encountered trouble, it was naturally hard for him to remain calm. When Gui Yi heard this, he glanced at Zhang San and said, "The Lord is chasing after Zhusi. Let's not talk about whether we can catch up to the Lord. Even if we can, we won't be able to help." Zhusi, Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He were all stunned when they heard this. Then, their expressions changed drastically. Obviously, the three of them knew what kind of existence Zhusi was. Otherwise, they wouldn't have acted like this. Guan Yi nodded and then said, "Zhusi has the heavenly book of Dunjia and is proficient in the art of Dunjia. That's why the Lord is chasing after him. Even if we catch up, it's useless. No one can deal with him except the Lord." When Gui Yi finished speaking, Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He were all shocked. Then, they shouted in unison, "How is that possible?" The Samsara Legion was the trump card of Samsara City. Every one of them was an emperor-level general and was about to break through to the saint level. Now, Gui Yi said that Zhusi had kidnapped the Samsara Legion. Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He naturally didn't believe it. Even if they knew that Zhusi was not simple, they didn't believe that Zhusi could kidnap the entire Samsara Legion. After shouting, the three of them looked at the huge pit under the city wall of Zhongshan Prefecture. Vaguely, they heard shouts, angry roars, the sound of weapons piercing through bodies, and the sound of items dropping after the golden scarf strongman died. He glanced at the three of them, sighed, and then said, "That's true. That is indeed the case. That's Wasi's methods are extraordinary. He used a kind of trick to make us mistakenly believe that the Samsara Legion is still in the giant pit. In fact, the Samsara Legion has already been taken away by him using the hidden armor heavenly book." He glanced at Tian Feng, then continued, "I'm not sure what to do. If Brother Yuan Hao hadn't just gone to the Lord's world with the Lord and not been disturbed by Wasi, I'm afraid that Jiao would still be in the dark." After saying that, He pointed at the void with his right hand. The next second, an inexplicable fluctuation appeared above the huge pit under the city wall of Zhongshan Prefecture. Pop! There was a sound. The sound that Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He could still hear from the huge pit a moment ago disappeared without a trace. The next second, Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He's faces suddenly became very ugly. Then they roared Zwasi. Their voices were full of killing intent. He glanced at the three of them and then said, "Don't think too much. Don't think too much. Although Wasi is an outsider with extraordinary abilities, he can't hurt the Lord. To be precise, the Lord can kill him like killing a chicken. We just have to wait quietly in case Wasi has an accomplice." When Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He heard this, their faces suddenly changed. They hurriedly looked at the army of Samsara City and shouted, "Everyone on guard! Kill anyone who dares to come within 500 meters of the army." "Yes, General," the army of Samsara City shouted in unison. Then they took out their bows and arrows and were ready for battle. On the battlefield, the players who were picking up the trash equipment that the army of Samsara City didn't want were all dumbfounded. What happened to Boss Yichun? Why did he suddenly get angry? I'm not sure. Some idiot must have offended Yichun. Otherwise, why would Yichun get angry? He must have a death wish. Why didn't he think about how powerful Yichun is? How dare he offend Boss Yichun? That's right. That idiot must be dead. Yichun has never shown mercy. Anyone who dares to offend Boss Yichun won't be able to survive. 200 miles to the west of Zhongshan County, beside a huge lake, an enormous book made entirely of bamboo slips flew all the way to this place, and then flew towards the lake. However, at this moment, an ancient copper coin with wings suddenly descended and landed on the bamboo slips. A buzzing sound was heard. The bamboo slips fell to the ground and shrank to the size of an ordinary bamboo slips. As the bamboo slips changed, the soldiers of the Samsara Legion instantly appeared beside the lake. They were all dumbfounded. They had just been collecting the items dropped by the gold scarf strongman in the huge pit. Who knew that they would suddenly faint and wake up here? The 10 Kiliarchs of the Samsara Legion looked around, and their expressions changed. In the next second, the 10 Kiliarchs shouted in unison, "Summon your mounts and be on guard." Hearing this, the soldiers of the Samsara Legion waved their right hands in unison. Bang, bang, bang. A series of dull thuds rang out. 10,000 savage rhinos instantly appeared beside the lake. In the next second, the soldiers of the Samsara Legion mounted the rhinos in unison. Then they took out their weapons and were on guard. At this moment, a long sigh was heard. Sigh. Chapter 406. Who's there? The 10 Kiliarchs of the Samsara Legion opened their eyes and shouted in unison after hearing this long sigh. As soon as the Kiliarchs finished speaking, a white-haired old man suddenly appeared beside the bamboo scroll. Kill! A roar was heard. All the soldiers of the Samsara Legion stabbed at the old man without hesitation. Poof, poof, poof. 10,000 piercing sounds were heard. 10,000 white gas pillars appeared in an instant and shot at the old man who appeared out of thin air. This was the effect of the Samsara Legion's soldiers releasing their true chi. The 10,000 gas pillars were extremely fast. In a flash, they arrived in front of the white-haired old man and pierced through his body. The faces of the Samsara Legion soldiers changed when they saw that the white-haired old man was still standing there unharmed. At this moment, the white-haired old man looked at the Samsara Legion, smiled, and said, I'm Zwa. I'm here to solve your problems. Please don't misunderstand." The soldiers of the Samsara Legion were stunned when they heard this. They didn't expect that the old man who brought them here for no reason would be the legendary Zwisi. What was even more unexpected was that Zwisi would say that he was here to solve their problems. Zwisi glanced at the shocked Samsara Legion and bent down to pick up the bamboo scroll on the ground. However, at this moment, the treasure-fall coin on the bamboo scroll suddenly flapped its wings and flew away with the bamboo scroll. Zwisi's face changed when he saw this, but he quickly regained his composure. The soldiers of the Samsara Legion also saw the bamboo scroll taken away by the treasure-fall coin. They looked at each other, and in the next second, the weapons in their hands were aimed at Zwisi. An incomparably violent killing intent instantly rose up and then rushed towards Zwisi. Zwisi was stunned when he saw the killing intent of the Samsara Legion suddenly surge. He then shouted in a deep voice, "You've killed countless people. Now, you're all haunted by vengeful spirits. In less than a month, you'll all die. Listen to my advice. Immediately restrain your killing intent. Otherwise, it will stimulate the vengeful spirits and your lifespan will be shortened again." When the Samsara Legion soldiers heard this, their expressions did not change at all. Their killing intent did not diminish at all. This was because they knew that the bamboo slips belonged to Zwisi. Now that the bamboo slips had been taken away by their lord using a treasure, it was obvious that Zwisi was their lord, Yi Chen's enemy. For such an existence, the Samsara Legion would only make one choice, and that was to kill without mercy. Even if they died, they would have no regrets. Zwisi's expression changed when he saw that the Samsara Legion's killing intent not only did not diminish, but was even more intense than before. At this moment, the 10 Kiliarchs of the Samsara Legion shouted in unison, "White Tiger Formation! Kill! Kill! Kill!" Deafening battle cries rang out instantly. In the next second, an extremely strong, murderous aura appeared above the Samsara Legion and then condensed. Roar! After a deafening roar, a huge white tiger appeared in the sky and then fell to the ground, enveloping the Samsara Legion. A tyrannical, ruthless, and murderous aura appeared on the white tiger's body. Without Yi Chun presiding over the Samsara Legion, their might was much weaker than before, and their might was also much weaker. However, no matter how small and weak it was still the white tiger formation. Zwisi's expression changed when he saw the sudden appearance of the white tiger. He then shouted, "I wanted to save your lives, but who knew that you would be so stubborn? You even wanted to kill me and cut off your own path of retreat. I will take my leave now." Roar! After a deafening roar, the white tiger leaped up and turned into a stream of light, instantly passing through Zwisi's body. Pop! A sound was heard. Zwisi's body instantly turned into air and dissipated into thin air. Bang! The white tiger fell to the ground, and the Samsara Legion appeared immediately. Ah, stubborn, stubborn. A long sigh was heard, and then gradually drifted away. At this moment, a loud roar was heard. Toad Yach, what arrogance! Yi Chun, who was riding on the Pegasus Little Gold, arrived in a flash at an extremely fast speed. The Samsara Legion was overjoyed when they saw Yi Chun suddenly appear and bowed in unison. "Greetings, Lord." Yi Chun nodded and then continued to charge forward. In a breath, he was 1,000 meters away. In the next second, Yi Chun waved his right hand and the Godslayer appeared in an instant. He then waved it at an empty space. Bang, bang. After 2 sounds, blood mixed with minced meat and bone fragments flew out in an instant. An extremely mournful howl followed. At this moment, a white-haired old man suddenly appeared in the originally empty space. However, his 2 legs had disappeared without a trace. Obviously, the blood, minced meat, and bone fragments that suddenly flew out in the air just now came from this white-haired old man, or rather Zwisi. The Samsara Legion's attack just now was just an illusion created by Zwisi, and Yi Chen's attack was Zwisi's actual body. Yi Chen glanced at Zwisi, whose face was contorted and who kept howling in pain. Then, he laughed coldly and shouted, Why are you robbing the Samsara Legion? When Zhusi heard this, he suddenly shuddered and then hurriedly explained, I'm trying to save them. When Yichen heard this, he narrowed his eyes and stabbed the Godslayer with his right hand. There was a sound. The Godslayer instantly pierced through Zhusi's left shoulder. The mournful howl sounded again. In the next second, Zhusi's already contorted face suddenly became even more contorted. He felt an extremely strong devouring power. That power was going to devour his soul completely. Zhusi, who felt this change, was immediately scared out of his wits. He could no longer care about howling in pain and hurriedly tried to stabilize his soul. Otherwise, he would die. He would die completely. Others might not know the danger after the soul was devoured, but how could Zhusi, who was in a mortal evolution state, not know? That was death. Complete death. Reincarnation and rebirth would bid farewell to him forever. This was not the outcome that Zhusi wanted to see. Yichen glanced at Zhusi, whose aura suddenly surged, and then closed his eyes to control his soul. He sneered and pulled out the Godslayer with his right hand again. Why are you robbing the Samsara Legion? Zhusi, who suddenly felt the devouring power disappear, was stunned. Then, he looked at the Godslayer in Yichen's right hand. In the next second, Zhusi sighed and said, I'm here for the sake of the world. The Samsara Legion is too heaven-defying. They've already killed hundreds of millions of people. They shouldn't continue to wreak havoc in the world. When Yichen heard this, he immediately looked up at the sky and laughed maniacally. Then he looked at Zhusi and shouted, What a great saying! The people of the world? You want to drown the Samsara Legion in the lake for the sake of your so-called people of the world? Chapter 407. Hearing this, Zhusi's expression suddenly changed, and he hurriedly said, I just want to take them away and resolve their negative karma. This way, I can prevent the people of the great Han dynasty from dying. I never thought of killing them. Zhusi, how dare you? When Yichen heard this, his eyes suddenly widened as he shouted. Yichen was not here before, but Yichen's divine sense covered an area of 300 miles. Therefore, Zhusi's every move was under Yichen's perception. Zhusi just wanted to take the Samsara Legion into the lake. If the Treasure-Fall coin had not arrived in time, the Samsara Legion would have been drowned in the lake by Zhusi. The lake here was very deep, at least 100 meters deep. There was a spring at the bottom of the lake that was connected to the underground river. Once the Samsara Legion was taken in by Zhusi, they would never be able to come out. Even if the soldiers of the Samsara Legion had reached the Emperor level and were about to advance to the Saint level, they would never be able to come out. Because no matter how powerful they were not extraordinary and needed to breathe. In the water, they would only meet one end, drowning. Now, Zhusi was saying that he would take the Samsara Legion away. How could Yichen believe him? General of agile cavalry. What I said is true. Zhusi hurriedly shouted when he heard this. Yichen glanced at the righteous Zhusi and pointed the god-slaying spear in his right hand at Zhusi. He shouted, Since you don't want to say it, then go to hell. General of agile cavalry. God is watching what we do. General of agile cavalry has also killed countless people. Do you feel guilty? Zhusi's face suddenly changed, and he shouted sternly. When Yichen heard this, he sneered and then shouted, Guilty? What a joke. In this world, the strong prey on the weak. If I don't fight, there will be others to fight. If I don't kill, there will be others to kill. Moreover, this is war. Death is inevitable. I have nothing to be ashamed of. Zhusi was stunned when he heard this. He had never expected Yichen to be so decisive. He did not care about killing at all, and his words were filled with murderous intent. After a moment of silence, Zhusi looked at Yichen and asked, General Piaoqi, have you ever thought that the people in golden scars who were killed were all the people of the Han dynasty? Most of them were bewitched. As long as you persuade them a little, they will return to normal. When Yichen heard this, he sneered. What Zhusi said about Jin returning to normal was nonsense. If Zhangju didn't die, Jin wouldn't return to normal. Even if they were taken as captives, they would still find opportunities to cause trouble. If they were locked up in the territory, they would find an opportunity to destroy the territory. This kind of situation often occurred in Yi Chen's previous life. Many players' territories had been destroyed in this way. Some had even been completely destroyed. Yi Chen glanced at Zhuo Ci and asked, "What do you think?" Zhuo Ci, "Who are you waiting for to save you? Nanhua or Yuji?" As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, Zhuo Ci's face suddenly changed. Obviously, Yi Chen hit the nail on the head. When Yi Chen saw this, he sneered. Then, with a thought, the Qinkuan bow and the sky shaking arrow appeared instantly. In the next second, Yi Chen pulled the bow, aimed at the sky, and shot an arrow. Clang! The sky shaking arrow instantly left the bowstring and disappeared in a flash. In the next second, the sky shaking arrow suddenly turned in midair and then shot to the east. At this moment, a cry of surprise was heard. "I'm just passing by. General Piaoqi, quickly take back the arrow." When Yi Chen heard this, he sneered. When Yi Chen asked Zhuo Ci just now, his divine sense had been in the state of being released. Naturally, he noticed the man who secretly came over. Yi Chen didn't say anything, but it didn't mean that Yi Chen didn't notice it. It also didn't mean that Yi Chen would let the man go. Puff! The sound of the sky shaking arrow piercing through the body instantly rang out. In the next second, a middle-aged man who was holding his heart with his right hand but couldn't stop the blood from spurting out appeared out of thin air and fell to the ground. Bang! A sound was heard. The middle-aged man fell heavily to the ground. Puff! A sound was heard. A large mouthful of blood was instantly spat out by the middle-aged man. When Zhuo Ci saw this, his eyes suddenly revealed an extremely frightened expression. Then he shouted in shock, "What kind of bow is this?" Obviously, Zhuo Ci was already in a mess at this moment. He didn't expect Yi Chen to be able to catch up with him. He also didn't expect Yi Chen's strength to be so tyrannical. What's more, he didn't expect Yi Chen to have one treasure after another. He even shot down the man who came to pick him up from the sky. Who the hell are you?" The middle-aged man looked at Yi Chen with a face of disbelief and then asked. When Yi Chen heard this, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Then, he looked at the middle-aged man and said, "Guess." I. When the middle-aged man heard this, his face suddenly turned red. Then his eyes rolled back and he instantly died. At this moment, the system's notification sound rang. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for killing a special historical figure, Yuji. Because of his special identity, player Yi Chen can choose any one of the 3 rewards. 1. Fate. 2. Special Forces Expansion Order, Heaven Rank. 3. Yuji's Soul. Hearing the system's notification, Yi Chen was slightly surprised. The middle-aged man was Yuji. Yi Chen had already guessed it. After all, Yi Chen had just met with Nanhua. But what Yi Chen didn't expect was that there would be an unexpected reward after killing Yuji. Looking at the 3 rewards, Yi Chen made his choice without hesitation. 1 and 2. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen. Samsara City has obtained all of Yuji's fate. Samsara City's fate has increased. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen. You have obtained Special Forces Expansion Order, Heaven Rank. As soon as the system's notification sound ended, Yi Chen was suddenly startled. The fate of Samsara City had increased by more than 2 times. And, as the owner of Samsara City, Yi Chen directly sensed the change in the fate of Samsara City. At the same time, Yi Chen's mind instantly became twice as clear. The automatic absorption speed of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth also increased by 2 times. After coming to his senses, Yi Chen's eyes suddenly opened, and then he looked at Zhuo Ci, who was lying on the ground with a frightened face. After seeing Yi Chen's malicious gaze, Zhuo Ci, who was already frightened, suddenly shuddered. Then, he hurriedly opened his mouth and yelled, "General of Agile Cavalry, Zhuo Ci is willing to follow you as my master. Please take me in." Ding! Special historical figure, Zhuo Ci, wants to follow you as his master. Do you accept? As soon as the system's notification sound ended, Yichen made his decision without hesitation. No, what a joke. Zhuo had schemed against Yichen. How could Yichen accept him? Even if Zhuo could bring more benefits to Yichen alive, Yichen would not accept him. After Yichen made his decision, Zhuo's face suddenly turned pale. Then he thought of something and hurriedly took out a roll of yellow animal skin. Looking at the animal skin, Zhuo's eyes flashed with a trace of reluctance. Then he looked at Yichen and said, "This is a secret scroll of the Pre-Qin dynasty. If General of Agile Cavalry is willing to let me go, I'm willing to give it to you with both hands." Chapter 408. When Yichen heard this, he could not help but frown, after which he looked at the animal skin scroll in Zhuo's hand. The animal skin scroll in Zhuo's hand was something that had never appeared in Yichen's previous life. As for what it was used for, Yichen did not know, but that was not important. What was important was that Zhuo took it out and valued it. Obviously, it was not an ordinary item. Of course, anything related to the Pre-Qin dynasty was not simple. For example, the secret land in the underground palace and the 9 cauldrons of the ancient kingdom. Now that there was a secret scroll of the Pre-Qin dynasty, Yichen naturally would not think that it was an ordinary item. Thinking of this, Yichen raised the Godslayer in his right hand and stabbed it. Poof! A sound was heard. The Godslayer pierced through Zhuo's head. Just as Zhuo's eyes widened, the Godslayer's tip flashed and its devouring characteristic was activated. Zhuo's soul was instantly devoured. Pah! A sound was heard. The animal skin scroll in Zhuo's hand fell to the ground. At this moment, the system notification sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yichen for killing a special historical figure, Zhuo. Due to his special identity, player Yichen can choose 2 of the 3 rewards. 1. Fate. 2. Special Forces Expansion Order, Heaven Level. 3. Zhuo's Soul. Hearing the system notification, Yichen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Not bad, not bad. Another reward like this. Thinking of this, Yichen made his choice without hesitation. 1 and 2. Ding! Congratulations to player Yichen. Samsara City has obtained all of Zhuo's fate. Samsara City's fate has increased. Ding! Congratulations to player Yichen. You have obtained Special Forces Expansion Order, Heaven Level. As soon as the system notification ended, Yichen instantly felt that his body's automatic absorption of heaven and earth spiritual qi had doubled again. At the same time, Yichen's mind had doubled in clarity. Feeling the changes in his body, the corners of Yichen's mouth curled up. Although I don't know why these 2 bastards are scheming against me, it's not important. What's important is that I'll get a good harvest from killing them. Just as Yichen thought of this, the world announcement instantly sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yichen for being the first to kill a special historical figure, UG. Player Yichen is rewarded with 108 attribute points. Ding! Congratulations to player Yichen for being the second person to kill a special historical figure, Zhuo. Special reward to player Yichen, innate attribute points x 100. The world announcement was repeated 3 times in a row, and the entire world channel instantly exploded. F*CK. 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 Are you kidding me? UG and Zhuo were actually killed by Yichen? F*CK. Is there any justice in this world? How strong is Yichen? He can even kill UG and Zhuo in such a short period of time. Can't we have fun? That's right. This pervert is like a bug. Damn, all the good stuff is his. All the historical figures are his too. Now, he even got so many innate attribute points. Damn, Yichen is going to defy the heavens. That's right. F*CK. This is impossible. UG and Zhuo are legendary figures. They seem to be Earth immortals. How could they be killed by Yichen? He must be a fake, right? Fake my ass. Didn't you see the world announcement? F*CK. It's another 200 innate attribute points. Are you kidding me? F*CK. Since the beginning of the game, only a few people have gotten innate attribute points. And it's just a few points. No one else has gotten it before. Yi-chun, on the other hand, keeps getting innate attribute points. After he finishes, won't Yi-chun become a god? Yi-chun, you're already so awesome. Now you can tell the secret of the game. You can't always be strong and ignore others. There are shifters in the real world. Do you want the human race to be destroyed, and you're the only one left? That's right. Yi-chun, you can't be so selfish. The secret of the game has been hidden for so long. It's time to tell them. Even if you tell them, none of US can surpass you. What's there to worry about? The World Channel was in an uproar. After Yi-chun took a look, he curled his lips in disdain. The players were shocked because Yi-chun killed Zhusi and Yu-ji. This wasn't surprising. After all, Zhusi and Yu-ji were legendary figures. But in the end, they were killed by Yi-chun. How could the players not be shocked? Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that Yi-chun had gotten another 200 innate attribute points. This stimulated the players. The players didn't know what innate attribute points were in the past, but now they all knew. It was a good thing that could make one stronger quickly. Martial strength was 90. Using one innate attribute point, one could directly break through to the innate realm. Martial strength was 100. Using one innate attribute point, one could directly break through to the saint level general level. As for what realm one would reach after breaking through, no one knew. But this didn't hinder the player's judgment. That realm would definitely be very awesome. It would be 100% extraordinary. Therefore, everyone wanted innate attribute points. And now, Yi-chun had gotten another 200 innate attribute points. How could the players not be envious? How could they not be jealous? Therefore, the players began to persuade Yi-chun on the World Channel. They wanted Yi-chun to tell them the game's secret. From the player's point of view, Yi-chun was able to develop to his current level and become more and more powerful. It was 100% related to the game's secret that Yi-chun knew. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like this. Therefore, they wanted to know Yi-chun's secret. This way, they could also rise quickly like Yi-chun. But obviously, they thought too much. To Yi-chun, no matter what reason or excuse the players used, it wouldn't make Yi-chun waver at all. Thinking up to this point, Yi-chun smiled coldly. Then, he waved his right hand and two Special Forces expansion orders, heaven level, appeared in his hand. Special Forces expansion order, heaven level can increase the size of any Special Forces by 10 people. After seeing the introduction of the Special Forces expansion order, heaven level, Yi-chun's eyes suddenly widened. F***CK. Good stuff. Yi-chun guessed that the Special Forces expansion order, heaven level, could increase the limit of the number of people in the army. But Yi-chun didn't expect that the Special Forces expansion order, heaven level, could actually increase the limit of the number of people in the army by 10 times. Yi-chun had two of such orders. If he used both of them together, the limit of the number of people in the army would increase by 100 times. This thing came 2F** King timely. It would be hard for the Samsara Legion not to become the most powerful army in the world. Thinking up to this point, Yi-chun couldn't help but laugh wildly. Yi-chun had been troubled for a long time about the limit of 10,000 people in the Samsara Legion. But Yi-chun didn't have any good ideas. Yi-chun didn't have anything that could increase the size of the army in his previous life. But now, the Special Forces expansion order, heaven level, had appeared and directly solved this problem. As long as the two Special Forces expansion orders, heaven level, were used, the limit of the Samsara Legion soldiers would immediately increase from 10,000 to 1 million. Chapter 409. Thinking of this, Yi-chun chose to use it without hesitation. Ding! Player Yi-chun has used the Special Forces expansion order, heaven grade. The maximum number of members in the Special Forces can be increased by 10 times. Please select the type of army. Yi-chun made his choice as soon as the system notification ended. Samsara Legion. Ding! Special Forces Samsara Legion has been activated by special power. The maximum number of members has been increased by 10 times. Yi Chen chose to use the Special Forces Expansion Order, Heaven Grade, again. The upgraded Special Forces was the Samsara Legion. Ding! Special Forces Samsara Legion has been activated by a special power. The maximum number of members has been increased by 10 times. Yi Chen looked at the Samsara Legion's attribute panel. Samsara Legion, one and only Special Forces grade. SS's number of members, 1,000,000 Legion Battle Formation, White Tiger Battle Formation, Innate Grade Battle Formation, Vermilion Bird Battle Formation, Innate Grade Battle Formation, Legion Skills, Swift as the wind, slow as the forest, aggressive as the fire, immovable as the mountain, unpredictable as the dark, moving as the thunder. It was indeed upgraded to 1,000,000. The Samsara Legion arrived just as Yi Chen finished thinking. Upon arriving, the 10,000 soldiers of the Samsara Legion got down on one knee and then bowed in shame, saying, "This is the Samsara Legion. We are incompetent. Please punish us, my lord." When Yi Chen heard this, he could not help but smile. After which he said, "Zhuasi's strength far surpasses yours." "Thank you, my lord." The Samsara Legion soldiers heaved a sigh of relief and bowed in unison. Yi Chen nodded with a smile. Then he walked to Zhuasi's side. He raised his hand and grabbed the animal skin scroll on the ground. At this moment, the system notification sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player for obtaining a special item, Pre-Chin's Secret Scroll. Hearing this, Yi Chen directly looked at the Pre-Chin's Secret Scroll in his hand. A few seconds later, Yi Chen's brows furrowed as he shouted, "That's right. Chop up Zhuasi and Yuji's corpses and leave them in the wilderness." "Yes, my lord." The Samsara Legion soldiers were stunned when they heard this, and then hurriedly bowed. Although they didn't understand why Yi Chen suddenly wanted to torture Zhuasi and Yuji's corpses, that wasn't important. What was important was that their lord, Yi Chen, was furious. For the Samsara Legion, not to mention tearing Zhuasi and Yuji's corpses into pieces, even if it was the great Han Emperor, Lu Hong, they would do it without hesitation. In the next second, 10 soldiers from the Samsara Legion came out and used their spears as knives. They cut Zhuasi and Yuji's corpses into meat paste and threw them everywhere. Yi Chen looked at the corpses of Zhuasi and Yuji that were strewn all over the place. He spat on the ground and threw the Pre-Chin's Secret Scroll into the air. In the next second, Yi Chen flicked his finger. A fireball instantly appeared and enveloped the Pre-Chin's Secret Scroll, burning it. The reason Yi Chen was so angry was because he had learned the reason why Zhuasi and Yuji wanted to attack the Samsara Legion from the Beast Skin Scroll, or perhaps the Secret Scroll of the Pre-Chin dynasty. The two of them wanted to refine the Samsara Legion into undying zombies, like the Pre-Chin army in the Secret Realm. At this moment, the Pre-Chin Secret Scroll that was crackling in the air was describing how to refine a living person into a zombie. As for Zhuasi and Yuji's goal, Yi Chen already knew. The two of them wanted to gain merit, a huge amount of merit, and then ascend. At this moment, the demon race was invading the Great Han Empire. As long as they killed the demon race, they would gain merit. Although the two of them were powerful, the energy in their bodies was limited, so they couldn't keep killing. After killing to a certain extent, they would need to recover their magic power, and this recovery time was extremely long in the novice region of the Three Kingdoms. That was why they had set their sights on the Samsara army. They wanted to refine the Samsara army into undying and indestructible zombies and use the zombified Samsara army to deal with the demon race. Yi Chen was a little confused before. Why would people like Zhuasi and Yuji scheme against him? However, after Yi Chen saw the Pre-Chin Secret Scroll, he understood everything. The power and wealth of the mortal world were not attractive to Zhuasi and Yuji. The only thing that attracted them was ascension. However, ascension was stopped since the Pre-Chin era. No one could ascend anymore. Even when they were at the mortal evolution state before Yi Chen killed them, they still couldn't ascend. This was the restriction of this world. They couldn't break free. There is only one way to break free of this world restriction, and that was to gain a huge amount of merit. As long as they had enough merit, they could ascend. No wonders with Ci. This bastard kept saying that he wanted to help the Samsara Legion and bring the Samsara Legion to the bottom of the lake. Thinking about this, Yi-Chin narrowed his eyes and reached his spirit sense into the bottom of the lake. In the next second, Yi-Chin's eyes widened as he summoned the Chinquan bow and shot the heaven-shaking arrow at the bottom of the lake. Clank! The heaven-shaking arrow instantly left the bowstring and went straight to the bottom of the lake. After passing through the spring, it came to the underground river and flew to a huge formation disk at the bottom of the river. This formation disk was recorded in the Pre-Chin secret scroll. It was a formation disk used to refine zombies. Once the Samsara Legion was dragged here, the formation would be activated immediately. Soon, the Samsara Legion would be refined into zombies that would only listen to Ci and Yuji's orders. Yi-Chin's goal was to destroy the formation disk so that it wouldn't be used by others. The heaven-shaking arrow was extremely fast and touched the formation disk in the blink of an eye. Boom! 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 3 violent waves instantly appeared at the bottom of the lake. Then, the formation disk, which was the foundation of the formation, was shattered by the heaven-shaking arrow. 3 rays of light flashed, and the heaven-shaking arrow instantly disappeared from the bottom of the river and returned to Yi-Chen's side. 2 scums. Of all people to target, they had to target me. Thinking of this, Yi-Chen sneered. At this moment, Yi-Chen suddenly froze and looked up at the sky. There, the burnt Pre-Chin secret scroll, or rather, the beast's skin had disappeared. However, the sky wasn't empty. Instead, there was a piece of golden paper that was as thin as a wing. If this could surprise Yi-Chen, then the fact that the flames couldn't burn the golden paper shocked him even more. What was this? Thinking of this, Yi-Chen snapped his fingers. After the sound of a snap, the flames that were still burning the golden paper in the sky instantly dissipated. Yi-Chen glanced at the golden paper floating in the air. Then, he raised his right hand and sucked. In the next second, the golden paper was in Yi-Chen's hands. At this moment, the system's notification sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi-Chen for obtaining one of the 9 esotericas, the army formula. When the system's notification ended, Yi-Chen's eyes suddenly opened wide. How could it be? How could this appear in the 3 Kingdoms beginners area? How could Yi-Chen not know what the 9 esotericas were? It was an extremely powerful secret from another world. Once mastered, it would be extremely powerful. Take the army formula as an example. As long as Yi-Chen mastered the army formula, all the weapons in the world, including those spirit treasures from the untainted land and even primordial treasures, would be under Yi-Chen's control. Of course, the prerequisite was that Yi-Chen's cultivation level was high enough and he had mastered the army formula. Chapter 410. Damn it, I didn't expect the 3 Kingdoms to have this in the newbie area as well. Not bad, not bad. One of the 9 esotericas, the army formula, is mine. Thinking of this, Yi-Chen smirked and chose to use it without hesitation. In the next second, the golden paper turned into a sky full of golden words and enveloped Yi-Chen. When the last golden word entered Yi-Chen's mind, the system notification sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi-Chen for obtaining the innate skill Army Formula. Army Formula, one of the 9 esotericas, can control all weapons in the world. As soon as the system notification ended, Yi-Chen smirked. The Army Formula came at the right time. Now that I'm sealed, I can't use the true chi in my body, but the Army Formula is not affected by the seal at all. Thinking of this, Yi-Chen straightened the sword fingers on his right hand and moved his consciousness. An ancient golden army formula appeared on the ground instantly. The army formula was surrounded by golden light and formed a huge golden disk. Tiny golden runes swam continuously in it, and Yi-Chen was standing in it. At the same time, the sound of Tao was heard. The Samsara Legion was stunned when they saw the strange phenomenon under Yi-Chen's feet. They had never seen Yi-Chen use this skill before, let alone anyone else. Just as the Samsara Legion was stunned, countless sounds of weapons vibrating could be heard. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The long spears in the hands of the Samsara Legion were vibrating uncontrollably. In the next second, 10,000 long spears flew from the hands of the Samsara Legion and flew towards Yichun. The Samsara Legion saw this, and their expressions changed. They then shouted, "My lord, be careful." The Samsara Legion was really frightened at this moment. They didn't expect the weapons in their hands to fly uncontrollably. This wasn't a big deal, but the weapons were aimed at Yichun. How could they not worry? How could they not be afraid? If their lord, Yichun, was harmed in any way, they would not be able to absolve themselves from the blame, even if they died 10,000 times. However, just as the Samsara Legion subconsciously rushed towards Yichun, the rifles that were flying towards Yichun stopped 5 meters away from Yichun. 10,000 long spears, with the spear shaft outside and the spear tip facing inwards, formed a huge circular plate. When Yichun saw this, he smiled and said, "Don't panic. This is just one of my skills." As soon as Yichun finished speaking, the Samsara Legion stopped in their tracks and looked at each other in shock. The next second, the Samsara Legion knelt down on one knee and shouted, "Long live the Lord! Long live! Long live!" At this moment, there was only one thought in the minds of the Samsara Legion soldiers. Their master, Yichun, had become even stronger, to be able to control weapons, and the weapons of 10,000 people at that. Anyone who encountered such a method would be terrified. In fact, the number of weapons that Yichun could control was just the beginning. Later on, he could control millions of weapons. Yichun glanced at the Samsara Legion soldiers and nodded with a smile. With a thought, the 10,000 long spears flew into the sky and began to circle. A few seconds later, the 10,000 long spears pierced the ground with incomparable speed. Poochie, poochie, poochie. The sound of 10,000 long spears piercing the ground was instantly heard. In front of Yichun, the ground with a radius of 100 meters was instantly filled with long spears. Looking at his masterpiece, Yichun nodded in satisfaction. With a thought, the 10,000 long spears flew up again and returned to the hands of the Samsara Legion soldiers. The army formula was much more awesome than the sword manipulation technique. Even the 10,000 swords returned to origin couldn't compare to the army formula. Thinking of this, Yichun's lips curled up. Then he mounted his horse and shouted, "Return to Zhongshan County." "Yes, master." Hearing this, the Samsara Legion soldiers bowed and shouted in unison. Then they rode their wild rhinos and followed behind Yichun, charging towards Zhongshan County. Rumble. 10,000 horses galloped, and the ground rumbled. Yichun left with the Samsara Legion and quickly disappeared into the distance. Not long after Yichun left, a long sigh sounded from the lakeside. Sigh. Even after cultivating for 100 years, you still can't beat the word greed. Why bother? Why bother? As the voice ended, the Nanhua elder who had appeared in Zhongshan County appeared here. Looking at the minced meat on the ground, Nanhua sighed again. Then he came to the minced meat and prepared to gather and berries with ci and UG's minced meat. However, Nanhua, who had just bent down, suddenly paused and looked at the place where the long spear had pierced. There, the long spear was no longer there, but countless holes formed a sentence. "Those who move without permission die." Seeing this, Nanhua's expression changed. He sighed and said, "So, the general of agile cavalry has already discovered me." After saying this, Nanhua was silent for a moment. Then, he bowed to Zhusi and UG's minced meat and said, "We have known each other for decades, but the two of you chose a path of no return. If the two of you had listened to my advice, you wouldn't have ended up like this." Sigh. Nanhua sighed again and walked away. After a few steps, he disappeared without a trace. Rumble. Yichun, who was leading the Samsara Legion towards Zhongshan County, suddenly raised his eyebrows. This Nanhua old deity was quite smart. Thinking of this, Yichun couldn't help but smile. Then, he returned to normal. In fact, when Yichun used the army formula, his divine sense had already detected Nanhua old deity's appearance. Although Nanhua was very far away, Yi-Chen's divine sense still detected him. Originally, when Yi-Chen killed Zhuo and Yu-Ji to obtain the Legion expansion order, he wanted to kill Nanhua old deity. However, Nanhua old deity didn't show any malice towards Yi-Chen. He even gave Yi-Chen a mythic-level unique mission. It was because of these two reasons that Yi-Chen gave up on killing Nanhua old deity. Yi-Chen would do some things, and Yi-Chen would take some things. However, Yi-Chen wasn't someone without a bottom line or principles. Killing Nanhua old deity would give him some benefits, but it didn't match Yi-Chen's nature. Yi-Chen could kill anyone and any demon without mercy. However, that was only when it came to his enemies. Those who helped Yi-Chen didn't plot against Yi-Chen and didn't show any hostility towards Yi-Chen, Yi-Chen wouldn't casually kill them. Even if killing them would give him some benefits, Yi-Chen wouldn't do it. To put it simply, it could be summed up in 4 words: a clear conscience. Of course, the people Yi-Chen wouldn't kill didn't include those who stood in Yi-Chen's way, such as those Lord-level players. Yi-Chen wanted to conquer the world. Unless these Lord-level players voluntarily disbanded their territories, Yi-Chen wouldn't hesitate to flatten their territories. Chapter 411. Even if Yi-Chen would eventually flatten the territories of all the Lord players, he wouldn't feel guilty at all. Even if some of the Lord players didn't harbor any hostility towards Yi-Chen, Yi-Chen wouldn't feel guilty either. This was a necessity in conquering the world. Those who followed him would prosper, and those who opposed him would perish. Time passed by slowly. When Yi-Chen led the Samsara Legion back to the outskirts of Zhongshan County, Guan Er, Zhang San, Zhang He, Gui Yi, and Tianfeng all heaved a sigh of relief and bowed in unison. "Greetings, my lord." Whoosh! The million-strong army of Samsara City knelt down on one knee in unison and bowed in unison. "Greetings, my lord." The million-strong army shouted in unison, their voices shaking the sky. Yi-Chen glanced at the army of Samsara City, then looked at Guan Er, Zhang San, Zhang He, Yi, and Tianfeng. He smiled and said, "Pass down my order. The army is to start a fire and prepare a meal. We will depart in 2 hours." "Yes, my lord." Guan Er, Zhang San, and Zhang He hurriedly bowed in unison. Yi-Chen nodded with a smile and rode towards the city gate of Zhongshan County. Before they reached the city gate, Yi-Chen, who was riding at full speed, suddenly frowned. He raised his right hand and signaled for the Samsara Legion to stop. The Samsara Legion instantly understood Yi-Chen's intention and hurriedly stopped their savage rhinos. Yi-Chen looked at the empty space in front of him and said in a deep voice, "Nanhua, why are you back here?" The moment Yi-Chen finished speaking, Nanhua old deity appeared in front of Yi-Chen. Whoosh! The moment the soldiers of the Samsara Legion saw Nanhua old deity, they all picked up their spears and pointed them at Nanhua. Nanhua glanced at the murderous Samsara Legion, then looked at Yi-Chen and bowed. "I'm here to deliver a gift." When Yi-Chen heard this, he was stunned for a moment before he asked, "What's the matter?" "I am willing to become a citizen of Samsara City. However, I have no interest in the secular world. Therefore, I beg the General of Agile Cavalry to grant me freedom for the rest of my life. I do not need to participate in the affairs of the secular world." Nanhua smiled and bowed again. When Yi-Chen heard this, he could not help but be stunned. Nanhua old deity came here to deliver gifts, not to collect the corpses of Zhuo and Yu-Ji, but to become a citizen of Samsara City. This was something that Yi-Chen had never thought of. Nanhua, Yu-Ji, and Zhuo were the most special existences in the Three Kingdoms beginners area. It was impossible for players to tame them, and the system would not allow players to tame them either. This was because Nanhua, Yu-Ji, and Zhuo were all existences that transcended the mortal realm. Furthermore, they weren't sealed. If a player could subdue any one of them, they would be invincible. Therefore, the system did not allow players to subdue any of them. Of course, if a player was strong enough, such as Yi-Chen, the system would only seal them and would not interfere. Yi Chen had known this for a long time. Therefore, Yi Chen had never thought of subduing Nanhua. But now, Nanhua came here and begged Yi Chen to agree to let him become a citizen of Samsara City. Although it wasn't an acknowledgement of ownership, it wasn't much different from subduing him. As long as Nanhua became a citizen of Samsara City, he would definitely bring benefits to Samsara City. For example, he could cure illnesses for the people, refine pills, and enlighten the children of Samsara City. There were all kinds of benefits. Thinking of this, Yi Chen raised his eyebrows and said, "All right, I agree. From now on, Nanhua will be a citizen of Samsara City. He doesn't need to care about the secular world and can focus on cultivation." As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, the system notification rang. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen, a special historical figure, Nanhua Immortal, for joining Samsara City and becoming a citizen of Samsara City. Thank you, General Yao Qi. Nanhua Immortal smiled and bowed. After the Nanhua old deity finished speaking, he took out a token and raised it above his head. He then handed it to Yi Chen and said, "This is a gift from me to the great general of agile cavalry. Please accept it." Yi Chen was stunned when he saw Nanhua take out the token. Then he laughed loudly and said, "It's a coincidence. It's fate. This thing belongs to me." After saying this, Yi Chen used his right hand to suck the token from Nanhua's hand into Yi Chen's hand. At this moment, the system notification rang. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for obtaining Special Forces Expansion Order, Heaven Level, X1. The moment the system notification ended, the corners of Yi Chen's mouth curled up. This was it. Thinking of this, Yi Chen felt very good. Yi Chen gave up on killing Nanhua for two reasons. First, it was not in line with Yi Chen's nature. Second, killing Nanhua would not give him anything. This was because Nanhua Immortal was not hostile to Yi Chen and had never schemed against Yi Chen. To put it simply, Nanhua Immortal was like an ally, not a red-name monster. Killing him was useless. Thinking of this, Yi Chen let out a long sigh and looked at Nanhua. "Thank you. This thing is very useful to me." When the Nanhua Old Immortal heard this, he chuckled and bowed. He then said, "General Yao Qi, please remember not to use the recruitment token on me. Although the success rate is close to 0, if the recruitment token succeeds, General Yao Qi will have to suffer a great calamity." As soon as Nanhua Immortal said this, a thunderous sound suddenly rang out. Boom! Crack! In the next second, a pillar of lightning as thick as a leg appeared out of nowhere and shot towards Nanhua Immortal. Nanhua Old Deity's expression changed drastically when he saw this. He looked at Yi Chen and yelled, "General Yao Qi, leave now." Clearly, Nanhua Immortal knew the power of the lightning pillar and was worried that Yi Chen would be implicated. Hearing this, Yi Chen narrowed his eyes and jumped into the air. At the same time, Yi Chen grabbed at the air with his left hand and activated the Shunxiao thunder manipulation art. The pillar of lightning as thick as a leg changed direction and flew towards Yi Chen. "My lord, the Samsara Legion, Guan Yi, Tian Feng, Guan Er, Zhang San, Zhang He, and the million soldiers of Samsara City were all shocked and shouted in shock. Just at this moment, the lightning pillar descended and struck Yi Chen's left hand with a boom. Crackle, crackle, the sound of electric current instantly sounded from Yi Chen's body. The pillar of lightning as thick as a leg turned into countless tiny lightning snakes that slithered around Yi Chen's body and attacked Yi Chen's body viciously. Seeing this, Yi Chen's subordinates were all shocked. In the distance, countless players who saw this scene had their mouths agape. F***CK. Yi Chen. Boss Yi Chen was struck by lightning. What's going on, Boss Yi Chen? I'm afraid he's done for how? How can this be? The members of Beauty's alliance were all in disbelief. While the gamers were discussing, Yi Chen, who was covered by lightning bolts, suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, "Let's go. Get in." The moment Yi Chen finished speaking, a strange force appeared in Yi Chen's body. In the next second, countless lightning snakes entered Yi Chen's body and disappeared. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the lightning snakes disappeared, and Yi Chun landed on the ground. Bang! A loud sound was heard. Yi Chun landed on the ground. Swish! The Samsara Legion members raised their weapons and aimed at Nanhua Elder with bloodshot eyes. They were ready to kill him. In the Samsara Legion's view, Yi Chun was struck by lightning because of Nanhua Elder. If it weren't for him, Yi Chun wouldn't be in danger. Stop! At this moment, Yi Chun let out a long breath and shouted. The Samsara Legion members were taken aback. They looked at Yi Chun and shouted, "My lord, it doesn't matter. Even if the lightning strikes, it won't be able to hurt me." Yi Chun smiled and said. Chapter 412. After Yi Chun finished speaking, he looked at the Nanhua Old Immortal, who was stunned because Yi Chun was safe and sound. He smiled faintly and said, "Let's go to Samsara City." Nanhua Old Immortal came back to his senses and hurriedly checked Yi Chun's condition. After confirming that Yi Chun was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief and bowed. "Thank you, General of Agile Cavalry, for saving my life. I will do my best to help the people of Samsara City. If I violate this oath, may the heavens and earth destroy me." Yi Chun had saved Nanhua Old Immortal. If it weren't for Yi Chun, Nanhua Old Immortal would have been struck to death by the lightning pillar. The reason for the lightning pillar was simple. Nanhua Old Immortal had revealed the heavenly secret, and the heavenly Tao of the Three Kingdoms beginner's area didn't allow it. If Nanhua Old Immortal had continued, it wouldn't have been a matter of one lightning pillar. At this moment, Yi, Guan Er, Zhang San, Zhang He, Tian Feng, and a million-strong army of Samsara City rushed over. "My lord!" Yi, Guan Er, Zhang San, Zhang He, and Tian Feng shouted anxiously. Yi Chun glanced at his subordinates and felt warmth in his heart. He then said with a smile, "Don't worry. The lightning can't hurt me." Yi, Guan Er, Zhang San, Zhang He, and Tian Feng all heaved a sigh of relief. When they saw Yi Chun forcefully withstanding the lightning bolt that was as thick as a leg, they were quite frightened. Now that they saw that Yi Chun was safe and sound, the stone in their hearts naturally fell to the ground. Yi Chun couldn't help but smile when he saw that his subordinates were relieved. He then looked at Nanhua Old Immortal and said, Go to Samsara City and cultivate in peace. Don't think too much about other things." "Yes, General of Agile Cavalry, Nanhua will take his leave." The Nanhua Old Immortal nodded and bowed again. Then, he left the place and disappeared without a trace after a few steps. Yi Chun looked in the direction Nanhua Old Immortal left and then looked up at the sky. Who would have thought that Nanhua would tell me something like this? If he were to subdue him, a great heavenly tribulation would descend. Great divine retribution was a type of divine retribution. In most cases, it could easily kill a mortal evolution state. The lightning pillar that fell just now wasn't a major heavenly tribulation. It was just a punishment from the heavenly Tao of the Three Kingdoms for leaking secrets to the Nanhua Elder Immortal. If it was a true major tribulation, its power would be 10 times stronger than the lightning pillar just now, and that was only the power of the first major tribulation. Even if he managed to survive the first tribulation, there were still 8 more. Each tribulation was 10 times more powerful than the last. Unless Yi Chun used a connate numinous treasure, there was no way he could withstand it. Just now, Yi Chun's physical body had resisted the lightning pillar in order to cultivate the Divine Night thunder-controlling technique. The result was just as Yi Chun had expected. Not only was he safe and sound, but his Divine Night lightning manipulation technique had also improved by a large margin. His ability to control lightning had also improved by quite a bit. If it was a true major heavenly tribulation, Yi Chun definitely wouldn't use his physical body to resist it. This was because Yi Chun's body couldn't handle it yet. Of course, no matter how powerful the major heavenly tribulation was, Yi Chun wasn't worried. This was because Yi Chun had a connate numinous treasure and because this was the novice region of the Three Kingdoms. compared to the prehistoric era's major heavenly tribulation. The major heavenly tribulation in the novice region of the Three Kingdoms was nothing. Thus, Yichen wasn't worried about the major heavenly tribulation at all. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that Yichen learned one thing from the Nanhua Elder Immortal. The major heavenly tribulation in the novice region of the Three Kingdoms couldn't be activated. Even if Yichen wasn't afraid, he couldn't. At least not now. Once the major heavenly tribulation was activated, Yichen would automatically ascend. Even if Yichen didn't want to ascend, he had no choice. When the time came, a guiding force would appear and pull Yichen directly to the prehistoric era. This was the reason why the heavenly Tao in the novice region of the Three Kingdoms stopped the Nanhua Elder Immortal from speaking. It didn't want Yichen to know that he would ascend after transcending the tribulation. But the truth was that Yichen knew many things and secrets after his rebirth. The major heavenly tribulation was one of them. The heavenly Tao in the novice region of the Three Kingdoms was interesting. It knew that Meng Chao had a connate numinous treasure and a connate numinous treasure that could easily transcend tribulations. It wasn't afraid of the major heavenly tribulation at all. Therefore, it purposely told the Nanhua Elder Immortal about this and stopped him halfway. It wanted to arouse my greed and make me want to subdue the Nanhua Elder Immortal. If I was really greedy, I would use the recruitment token to subdue the Nanhua Elder Immortal. Once I used it, it would definitely succeed. Then, I would attract a major heavenly tribulation. I could use any connate numinous treasure to resist the major heavenly tribulation and transcend it successfully. Once I transcended the tribulation, I would ascend immediately and leave the novice region of the Three Kingdoms. I would never be able to come back. It saw Meng Chao as an anomaly and wanted him to leave the novice region of the Three Kingdoms as soon as possible. At this thought, Yichen couldn't help but smirk. The major heavenly tribulation would be of great help to the Divine Knight lightning manipulation technique. He had to attract it. However, that would only happen when the entire nation ascended at that time. He could subdue the Nanhua Elder Immortal, attract the major heavenly tribulation, and cultivate the Divine Knight lightning manipulation technique. That way, he could still make a fortune before he left. At this thought, Yichen raised his eyebrows and looked at the Special Forces expansion token Heaven Grade in his right hand. In the next second, Yichen chose to use it without hesitation. Ding! Player Yichen used the Special Forces expansion token Heaven Grade. The maximum number of members in the Special Forces can be increased by 10 times. Please choose the type of army. As soon as the system's notification ended, Yichen made his choice. Samsara Legion. Ding! Special Forces Samsara Legion has been activated by a special power. The maximum number of members has been increased by 10 times. Samsara Legion, one and only Special Forces grade. SS's number of members, 10,000,000 Army Battle Formation. White Tiger Battle Formation, Innate Grade Battle Formation. Vermilion Bird Battle Formation, Innate Grade Battle Formation. Army Skills: swift as the wind, slow as the forest, aggressive as the fire, immovable as the mountain, unpredictable as the dark, moving as the thunder. Looking at the Samsara Legion's attribute panel, Yichen smiled and shouted, "Enter the city." "Yes, my lord." The Samsara Legion heard this and shouted in unison. Then, they followed Yichen into Zhongshan County. In the distance, the players who had been watching Yichen looked at each other and then burst into an uproar. F*CK. F*CK. What did I just see? Boss Yichen was struck by lightning, and he's fine. How is that fine? He didn't suffer any damage at all. F*CK, a lightning pillar as thick as a leg. How powerful would that be? Take a hit and you'll know how powerful it is. Haha. F*CK, I'm not interested in that. But then again, Boss Yichen is too awesome. He can even take a hit from such a thick lightning pillar. There's definitely no one in this world who can go against Boss Yichen. That's right. Look at Boss Yichen's level, how many innate attribute points he has, and how many historical generals and officials he has recruited. If anyone dares to make a fuss, Yi Chun can destroy them with a wave of his hand. While the players who followed Yi Chun were discussing fervently, Yi Chun led the Samsara Legion into Zhongshan County. Looking at the densely packed players on the streets, Yi Chun squinted his eyes. Then, he looked at the Zhongshan County soldiers who were maintaining order and shouted, "Send out my orders. All mutants are to leave Zhongshan County within an hour. Those who disobey will be executed." Chapter 413. Yes, General of Agile Cavalry. The soldiers in charge of maintaining order in Zhongshan County hurriedly bowed. After that, the soldiers split into 10 groups and rushed towards the streets and alleys of Zhongshan County, shouting as they ran. General of Agile Cavalry's orders. All players are to leave Zhongshan County immediately. Those who disobey will be beheaded. When the players in Zhongshan County heard Yi Chen's orders, they were all shocked. They wanted to curse, but no one dared to. This was because they knew that if they said anything bad about Yi Chen, they would definitely be killed if the soldiers in Zhongshan County or Yi Chen's subordinates heard them. No one wanted to show off at this time. It was not worth it. Therefore, the players quickly left Zhongshan County in groups. Of course, the players' willingness to leave was directly related to the fact that there were no benefits to be had. Otherwise, the players would definitely think of ways to stay. Yi Chun led the Samsara Legion forward, and the players made way for them. Soon, they arrived at the Jin Mansion in Zhongshan County. As soon as Yi Chun arrived, Chu, Yi, and Gao Lan hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. "Greetings, my lord." When Yi Chun heard this, he smiled and nodded. He then asked, "Did anyone come to cause trouble?" "My lord, we came just in time. After killing some bandits, no one came to the Jin Mansion." Chu, Yi, and Gao Lan hurriedly bowed and said. When Yi Chun heard this, his eyes narrowed, and a cold light flashed in them. She really had guts. Fortunately, he had called Chu, Yi, and Gao Lan to guard the place. Otherwise, when he thought of this, Yi Chun looked at Gao Lan and Chu, Yi, nodded, and said, "The two of you go outside the city and choose 100,000 soldiers each. Set off in 2 hours." "Yes, my lord." When Gao Lan and Chu, Yi heard this, they were overjoyed and hurriedly bowed. Yi Chun nodded, then dismounted from his horse and prepared to go to the Jin Mansion. At this moment, according to Yi Chun's orders, the soldiers in Zhongshan County who were guarding the Jin Mansion knelt down on one knee and said in unison, "Please take me in, General of Agile Cavalry." When Yi Chun heard this, he couldn't help but stare blankly. He didn't expect that the city guards of Zhongshan Prefecture would want to rely on him. At this point, Gao Lan and Chu Yi looked at each other, then bowed together and said, "My lord, the soldiers of Zhongshan County are all loyal and brave. The cowardly ones have already fled with the original defending generals." When Yi Chun heard this, he was silent for a few moments. Then he looked at the city guards of Zhongshan County. "You are not afraid of tens of thousands of gold scarves, and you have endured for a few days without fear of death. Your bravery is extraordinary. However, you are all soldiers of Ji Province. If you follow me rashly, it would be unreasonable." At Yi Chun's words, the faces of the soldiers guarding Zhongshan County darkened. What Yi Chun said was the truth. They wanted to follow Yi Chun, but their status was there. They were soldiers of Ji Province, not Yu Province. They couldn't follow Yi Chun casually. Gao Lan and Chu Yi sighed together. They couldn't solve the problem of these soldiers' status. Moreover, Zhongshan County couldn't be without soldiers. Otherwise, bandits and robbers could easily destroy Zhongshan County. When that happened, the people in the city would suffer. Yi Chun glanced at the dejected soldiers of Ji Province and smiled, then said, "Stay in Zhongshan County. You will continue to stay in Zhongshan County. After the crisis of Mount Chong is resolved, I will inform the governor of Mount Chong that the soldiers of Zhongshan County will be wiped out in order to resist the Golden Turban Army. You will only need to leave Zhongshan County before the soldiers of Mount Chong arrive." When Yi Chun finished speaking, the city guards of Zhongshan County were stunned. They then bowed in ecstasy and said, "Greetings, my lord." Their words were full of gratitude. Of course, there was also a strong sense of excitement. because Yi Chen's words were very obvious. He was creating an opportunity for them to follow Yi Chen. As long as the governor of Mount Chang knew that they were all killed, they could leave Zhongshan County without any scruples. At that time, their status as soldiers of Ji Province would no longer be restricted. They could choose to join Samsara City without hesitation and become Yi Chen soldiers. The soldiers guarding the city of Zhongshan County had never thought that Yi Chen, the general of agile cavalry, would go to such an extent for them, a group of insignificant soldiers. In their opinion, Yi Chen could completely ignore them. After all, they were not elite soldiers or fierce generals. But the fact was that Yi Chen, the general of agile cavalry, really thought of a way for them and even put it into action. People had feelings, and the city guards of Zhongshan County were no exception. So they were excited, and grateful. Yi Chen glanced at the fanatical city guards of Zhongshan County, nodded with a smile, and then walked toward Jin Mansion. Yi Chen was willing to accept the city guards of Zhongshan County because they were really brave. Otherwise, Yi Chen wouldn't have paid attention to them. Even some elite soldiers couldn't keep calm in the face of tens of millions of golden turban soldiers and fight back hard. So Yi Chen didn't refuse the request of these soldiers. Of course, Yi Chen had another idea, that was to recruit as many soldiers as he could from a place. Of course, this had to be done secretly. It was not the right time to recruit soldiers from outside Yuzhou openly. The moment Yi Chen entered the Zhen residence, he saw that there were over 1,000 people inside. A middle-aged couple was in the front. Behind them were 5 girls. Behind them were thousands of servants and servants. Before Yi Chen could take a closer look, the middle-aged couple hurried a few steps forward and then bowed together. Wu Ji, Zhen Yi, and our children pay respect to the general of agile cavalry. As soon as they finished speaking, the 5 girls followed suit and bowed together. Zhen Jiang, Zhen Ta, Zhen Dao, Zhen Rong, and Zhen Zhuanzi pay respect to the general of agile cavalry. Greetings to the general of agile cavalry. Thousands of servants and servants hurriedly followed suit and bowed. Yi Chen nodded with a smile, and then looked at the girl who called herself Zhen Zhuanzi. The moment he saw her, Yi Chen's eyes lit up. Zhen Zhuanzi is really worthy of the name of Lu Ocean. Zhen Zhuanzi was wrapped in a pale pink robe and a white gauze. Her skin was whiter than snow, and her eyes were as clear as water. She didn't put any makeup on her face, but she looked fresh and attractive. Her fine black hair was tied up with a ribbon, and a butterfly hairpin was inserted. A wisp of black hair was hanging in front of her chest. She was so lovely. Beautiful, very beautiful, very beautiful. She was so beautiful that she was out of this world. She was so beautiful that one couldn't bear to blaspheme her. This was the feeling that Zhen Zhuanzi gave Yi Chen at this moment. Zhen Zhuanzi saw Yi Chen's appreciative and somewhat aggressive eyes. Her face suddenly turned red, and then she took a few steps forward and bowed to Yi Chen. Zhen Zhuanzi, pay respect to the Lord. Thank you for saving the Zhen clan from danger. Chapter 414. When Yi Chen heard this, he nodded with a smile and said, "That's right. Let's go to Samsara City. It's safer there." At this moment, there were demons everywhere in the Great Han Dynasty. Only Yuzhou had been cleared of Golden Turban. Zhenju Sei had recognized Yi Chen as her master. Naturally, Yi Chen would not let her stay in Zhongshan Prefecture. As far as Yi Chen was concerned, Zhenju Sei was a woman he had already decided on. She had to be 100% safe. Zhenju Sei nodded and looked at Zhen Yi and Lady Zhang. Before she said anything, Zhen Yi said with a smile, "Mir, go to Samsara City. Don't worry about your family." As soon as Zhen Yi's words fell, Zhenju Sei's eyes reddened. Teardrops appeared in an instant, and then back and forth in her eyes. Yi Chen hurriedly looked at Zhen Yi and said, "If the Zhen clan is willing, they can also move to Samsara City." Yi Chen did not mention the Zhen clan when he asked Zhenju Sei to go to Samsara City, because Zhenju Sei was the only one who recognized Yi Chen as her master. Yi-chun did not have a master relationship with anyone else. Otherwise, Yi-chun would directly say that Zhen Jusei's family had moved to Samsara City. After all, Zhen Jusei was a woman. In this era, she could not represent the Zhen clan and could not influence the decision of the Zhen clan. That was why Yi-chun did not mention Zhen Jusei's family and only asked her to go to Samsara City. Zhen Yi's eyes lit up when he heard this. He did not expect that Yi-chun would ask the Zhen clan to move to Samsara City. In this way, the Zhen clan would be relying on Yi-chun. This was something that he had always wanted to say, but did not dare to say. He wanted to say that it was because Yi-chun was the great Han Empire's governor of Yuzhou and the great general of Agile Cavalry. He had a prominent position and a strong army. Once they followed Yi-chun, the Zhen clan would no longer have to suffer the turmoil of war. He didn't dare to say it because the Zhen clan didn't have the capital to rely on Yi-chun. Although the Zhen clan was considered a large clan, it wasn't very prominent, and there wasn't anything special about it. Besides some money, they didn't have much to offer when they joined Yi-chun. Originally, money was a bargaining chip, but the truth was Yi-chun was not short of money. Not only was he not short of money, he was even rich enough to rival a country. Zhen didn't know about this at first, but when he learned that Yi-chun had led an army to wipe out Zhang Liang's Golden Scarf army, he sent a servant to inquire about Yi-chun. After hearing the servant's explanation, Zhen Yi was at a loss. This was because Yi-chun did not lack money at all. If Yi-chun lacked money, how could he have obtained millions of war horses? How could he have equipped his subordinates with diamond-ranked set equipment? Moreover, there were millions of them. Even the war horses were wearing diamond-ranked horse armor. Therefore, Yi-chun didn't lack money at all, and there was only one result. The Zhen clan's money was not enough to be used as a bargaining chip to rely on Yi-chun. In this case, how could Zhen Yi open his mouth? Of course, Zhen Yi's daughters were all very beautiful, especially Zhenju Nua. She was otherworldly and as beautiful as a fairy. But in Zhen Yi's view, Zhenju Nua was following Yi-chun, not marrying Yi-chun. Moreover, Yi-chun didn't say that he liked Zhenju Nua, let alone that he wanted to marry Zhenju Nua. Therefore, Zhen Yi couldn't open his mouth and tell Yi-chun that the Zhen clan was relying on Yi-chun. After all, the Zhen clan was a large clan, not ordinary people. It was impossible for them to follow Zhenju Nua to Samsara City casually. If that was the case, it was very likely to arouse Yi-chun's dislike, which was something Zhen Yi didn't want to see. But now, Yi-chun took the initiative to ask the Zhen clan to move to Samsara City. How could Zhen Yi not be excited? How could he not be excited? It wasn't just Zhen Yi. Even Madame Zhang, Zhen Jiang, Zhen Tuo, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong revealed excited expressions. Being able to move to Samsara City meant one thing. From now on, they wouldn't have to live in fear anymore. My lord, hearing this, Zhen Jusei hurriedly turned to look at Yi-chun and called out with reddened eyes. Change the way you address me. You should understand what I mean. Yi-chun glanced at Zhenju Nua and said with a smile. Zhenju Nua was stunned. Then, her face turned red and she lowered her head, not daring to look at Yi-chun again. How could Zhenju Nua not understand Yi-chun's meaning? He wanted her to call Yi-chun husband. Zhenju Nua didn't have any objection to this. She was just shy. She was very young before, but after the seal was lifted by the system, she grew up. Although she was still a young girl, she knew a lot of things, including the rumors about Yi-chun. In this era, beauties loved heroes. Even the most beautiful ones were no exception. Yi-chun was obviously a hero among heroes. Moreover, he was also very handsome. How could Zhenju Nua not have a good impression of Yi-chun? Moreover, after the seal was lifted, she had already recognized Yi-chun as her master. In her heart, she already had the idea of whether Yi-chun would accept her. Now, Yi-chun asked Zhenju Nua to change the way she addressed him. Naturally, it was in line with Zhenju Nua's original intention. However, Zhenju Nua didn't expect Yi-chun to be so direct and overbearing. For a moment, the shy young girl didn't dare to open her mouth to respond to Yi-chun. When Zhen Jiang, Zhen Tuo, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong heard this, they were all stunned. Then, A trace of hidden bitterness and envy flashed in their eyes. Obviously, the four of them also understood Yi Chen's meaning. They also had an inexplicable good impression of Yi Chen. Otherwise, they wouldn't have acted like this. Zhen Yi and Madame Zhang were both stunned. How could the two of them not understand Yi Chen's meaning? He wanted Zhen Junhua to call Yi Chun husband. They hadn't even given the betrothal gifts, and they hadn't even bowed to heaven and earth. Directly changing the way she addressed him was really a little pleasant surprise. That's right, it was a pleasant surprise. When Zhen Yi and Madame Zhang came back to their senses, they were immediately full of smiles. They were very happy. For the two of them, nothing could make them happier than this. Yi Chen was preparing to marry Zhen Junhua. Although they hadn't given the betrothal gifts, and they hadn't bowed to heaven and earth, this was just a secular ceremony. As long as Yi Chen was willing to marry Zhen Junhua, Zhen didn't care about the secular ceremony. Others couldn't get close to Yi Chen even if they wanted to. Zhen Yi wasn't stupid. How could he miss such a good opportunity? He wanted Zhen Junhua to hurry to Samsara City because he wanted Yi Chen to marry Zhen Junhua. As long as Yi Chen married Zhen Junhua, the Zhen clan would be justified in going to Samsara City. But now, there was no need to wait. Yi Chen was straightforward and domineering enough. He directly asked Zhen Junhua to change the way she addressed him. The truth was already clear. Mia, Madame Zhang saw that Zhen Junhua was still shy and hurriedly called out. When Zhen Junhua heard Madame Zhang's call, she tried hard to calm down. Then, she looked up at Yi Chen and called out, "Husband." Zhen Junhua's voice was very low and soft, but it was very pleasant. Yi Chen's heart couldn't help but flutter. Looking at Zhen Junhua, who was still shy, Yi Chen smiled and nodded. Then he said, "What do you want to bring? Go and prepare. I'll take you to Samsara City first. As for your family, I'll arrange for the army to escort them." "No, I don't want to bring." Zhen Junhua's face turned red again. Then she whispered. Hearing this, Yi Chen smiled and looked at Zhen Junhua, who was still shy. Then he said, "Well, let's go." Chapter 415. Zhen Ju-sei nodded gently. Yi Chen smiled when he heard this. He then held Zhen Ju-sei's hand and walked towards the door. Zhen Yi and his family hurriedly saw them off. At the door, Yi Chen carried Zhen Ju-sei and placed her on the Pegasus Shaojin. Madame Zhang, who was following them, suddenly made a decision. She looked at Yi Chen and said, "Son-in-law." Zhen Yi's expression changed, and he hurriedly looked at Madame Zhang. He scolded, "Shut up." Yi Chen looked at Zhen Yi's anxious expression and couldn't help but be surprised. He didn't understand what Zhen Yi and Madame Zhang were arguing about. However, there was one thing that Yi Chen could confirm. Madame Zhang had something to say, but Zhen Yi didn't want her to say it. Zhen Ju-sei's face suddenly turned pale, and she hurriedly said, "Father." She could see that Zhen Yi was a little angry, but Zhen Yi was her father, and Madame Zhang was her mother. She naturally didn't want them to quarrel. Yi Chen looked at the anxious Zhen Ju-sei and gave her a reassuring look. He then looked at Madame Zhang and said, "Mother-in-law, if you have something to say, just say it. We're a family, so there's no need to be so cautious." Zhen Yi was surprised by Yi Chen's words. He didn't expect that Yi Chen didn't dislike Madame Zhang's way of addressing him. Moreover, he spoke so politely. Zhen Yi scolded Madame Zhang for two reasons. Firstly, he didn't want Madame Zhang to continue speaking. Secondly, he didn't want Madame Zhang to call Yi Chen's son-in-law in public. Although Yi Chen and Zhen Ju-sei's marriage was basically set, it hadn't been announced yet. It didn't matter how she addressed him at home, but she couldn't be so casual outside. This was because Zhen Yi wasn't sure if Yi Chen would like it or not. If Yi Chen didn't like it, then wouldn't that be causing trouble for the Zhen clan? Moreover, Zhen Ju-sei might also be disliked by Yi Chen. However, it seemed that Yi Chen didn't care about this at all. Thinking of this, Zhen Yi immediately breathed a sigh of relief, but his face still showed a conflicted expression. He didn't open his mouth to stop Madame Zhang. When Madame Zhang saw Zhen Yi's expression, She hesitated for a moment. However, when she saw Zhang Yi's exceptional beauty, she immediately made up her mind. She then looked at Yi Chun and said, "Son-in-law, although your father-in-law is not very talented, he is still talented. Can you? As soon as Madame Zhang finished speaking, Yi Chun immediately understood what she meant. She wanted to help Zhang Yi get an official position. Yi Chun naturally knew what kind of existence Zhang Yi was. Although he wasn't a powerful figure, he was still a historical civil official with considerable talent. Soon, he would be promoted to the position of Kai Ling. Of course, it wouldn't be long before he stepped down. Yi Chun had naturally thought of recruiting Zhang Yi. After all, Yi Chun's territory was getting bigger and bigger, and there was a huge shortage of talents. Although Zhang Yi wasn't a top talent, he was still a historical civil official. He was completely qualified for the position of county magistrate. However, because of Zhang Yi's exceptional beauty, Yi Chun couldn't directly ask whether Zhang Yi wanted to follow him. Now that Madame Zhang had directly asked, how could Yi Chun refuse? Thinking of this, Yi Chun secretly smiled. He then looked at the blushing Zhang Yi and said solemnly, "This son-in-law has long heard about your talent. Originally, this son-in-law wanted to ask whether you'd like to come to Yuzhou province to help this son-in-law. However, this son-in-law didn't seem to have such an intention, so I didn't ask about it. Please forgive me, father-in-law." After saying this, Yi Chun bowed to Zhang Yi without hesitation to express his apology. Seeing this, Zhang Yi's eyes suddenly lit up. He hurriedly helped Yi Chun up and said, "Son-in-law, you can't. Zhang Yi naturally understood that Yi Chun was trying to protect his face. Of course, Yi Chun's words were also very sincere. There was no falsehood in them. It was precisely because of this that Zhang Yi's blushing face returned to normal. Then, it turned into excitement. Yi Chun recognizing his talent was what Zhang Yi wanted to see the most, so he was very excited. Hearing this, Yi Chun smiled and said, "Father-in-law is father-in-law. Father-in-law is an elder, so why can't this son-in-law pay his respects?" The moment Yi Chun finished speaking, Zhang Yi and Madame Zhang immediately revealed smiles on their faces. They were very satisfied with Yi Chun as their son-in-law. Zhang Jiesa, Zhang Jiang, Zhang Tuo, Zhang Dao, and Zhang Rong also smiled at this time. Because Yi Chun was approachable and didn't have the slightest arrogance, they all felt relaxed. Even Zhang Jiesa was no exception. It should be known that in this era, the concept of hierarchy was very important. If a royal princess married, even the princess's father-in-law would have to bow to the princess every day. Moreover, it couldn't be less than once. As for Yi Chun, he was the governor of Yuzhou, the marquis champion, and the general of agile cavalry. He had a prominent official position and a noble status. How could they not be happy when he talked to Zhang Yi and Madame Zhang so casually? At this time, Yi Chun glanced at the happy Zhang Yi and asked with a smile, "Yuzhou has a lot of manpower in Yuzhou. I wonder if father-in-law is willing to come and help your son-in-law?" Hearing this, Zhang Yi nodded without hesitation. Then, he hurriedly bowed and said, "Zhang Yi pays respect to the Lord." Actually, Zhang Yi had thought of following Yi Chun and acknowledging Yi Chun as his master. However, he really didn't think that he had any talent. Of course, this was also because Yi Chun's subordinates, such as Kai Yin, Gu Yi, Sun Qing, and so on, were all amazing talents. Chapter 416. When the 10 Kiliarchs of Zhongshan County heard this, their eyes lit up. They hurriedly bowed and saluted. "Yes, my lord." Their words were full of excitement. Not only them, but the soldiers of Zhongshan Prefecture on the streets also revealed excited expressions. Because Yi Chun asked them to escort the Zhen clan to Samsara City and let them change into diamond-level armor suits and war horses. This was undoubtedly telling them one thing. Yi Chun's previous promise was not false at all. He also treated them as real elite soldiers of Samsara City and did not reduce their treatment at all. This was beyond their expectations. Originally, they thought that at most, they would obtain some higher-level equipment. After all, they had just followed Yi Chun and were not elite soldiers. They would not be valued so much. But who would have thought that this was not the case at all? They were directly given diamond-level armor suits and a warhorse each. What did this mean? Yi Chun did not look down on them at all, nor did he mean to be perfunctory. How could they not be happy and excited to be valued by the great general of agile cavalry of the great Han Empire? Yi Chun glanced at the excited soldiers of Zhongshan County and nodded with a smile. Then he looked at Zhen Yi. When he was about to speak, he suddenly thought of something and his face suddenly changed. "My lord!" Zhen Yi saw that Yi Chun's face was not right and could not help but be stunned. He hurriedly asked. Hearing this, Yi Chun suddenly came back to his senses. He laughed a few times and said, "Nothing. I just remembered something." Yi Chun naturally would not tell the real reason. Now that Yi Chun was Zhen Yi's son-in-law, he could not tell Zhen Yi that he would die of illness in 3 years in front of Zhen Yi. It was also because of Zhen Yi's history that Yi Chun's face suddenly changed. Speaking of this, Yi Chun waved his right hand, and an elixir appeared in Yi Chun's hand. After seeing the medicinal pill in Yi Chun's hand, Zhen Yi's eyes suddenly went blank, and then he said in shock, This is the Yang recovery pill." When Yi Chun heard this, he chuckled and nodded. Then he passed the Yang returning pill to Zhen. "My lord, this item is extremely precious, this." Zhen Yi looked at the Yang returning pill in front of him and was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly spoke. Yi Chun's actions were very obvious. He wanted to give the Yang returning pill to Zhen Yi. How could Zhen Yi not see it? However, the Yang returning pill was too precious. It had the ability to bring someone back from the dead. How could Zhen Yi dare to casually accept it? Yi Chun glanced at the shocked Zhen Yi, smiled, and said, "You're right, father-in-law. Just take it in case you need it. Besides, I have a lot of it. When you arrive at the Samsara city, you can go to Nanhua and ask him to check on your body and get you well as soon as possible." When Zhen Yi heard this, he was stunned. He didn't expect Yi Chun to say this. "Xiansu, your father-in-law's body has." Madame Zhang suddenly thought of something and her expression changed. She hurriedly looked at Yi Chun and asked with a nervous expression. When Yi Chun heard this, he smiled and said, "It's just an old illness." Although Nanhua is a cultivator, his medical skills are also extraordinary. He will definitely be able to nurse your father-in-law's body back to health. Mother-in-law, you don't have to worry. Besides, there's the Yang returning pill as a guarantee. It will be absolutely safe. When Yi Chun finished speaking, Madame Zhang immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Then, she hurriedly looked at Zhen Yi. No matter how she looked at it, it was obvious. Hurry up and accept the Yang returning pill. It was obvious that Madame Zhang didn't want anything to happen to Zhen Yi. Zhen Yi glanced at Madame Zhang and then looked at Yi Chun. He solemnly bowed to Yi Chun and said, "Thank you for your gift, my lord. Zhen Yi swears to follow you to death." Ding! Zhen Yi's loyalty plus 10. Advance to die loyal. Ding! Madame Zhang's loyalty plus 200. Advance to die loyal. Ding! Zhenju's loyalty plus 200. Advance to die loyal. Ding! Zhenju's favorability plus 500. Advance to intimate. Ding! Zhenjiang's favorability plus 500. Advance to intimate. Ding! Zhen Tuo's favorability plus 500. Advance to intimate. Ding! Zhen Dao's favorability plus 500. Advance to intimate. Ding! Zhen Rong's favorability plus 500. Advance to intimate. When the series of system notifications ended, Yi Chun couldn't help but stare blankly. Zhen Yi's loyalty, Madame Zhang's loyalty, and Zhenju's loyalty had advanced to intimate. Yi Chun wasn't surprised. What surprised Yi Chun was that Zhen Jiang, Zhen Tuo, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong had feelings for Yi Chun. Yi Chun could tell that they had feelings for him. But Yi Chun didn't expect that Zhen Jiang, Zhen Tuo, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong would be so close to him. Others might not know about the effects of intimate, but how could Yi Chun not know? Even if Yi Chun were to drag Zhen Jiang, Zhen Tuo, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong to sleep together, they wouldn't object. In fact, they would be very happy. F***CK. This is a pot of soup. Thinking of this, Yi Chen's eyes lit up. Zhen Jiang, Zhen Ta, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong weren't super beauties, but they were first-rate historical beauties. Yi Chen naturally wanted to subdue the four of them. But before he could even take action, the four of them had already reached the point where they wouldn't marry anyone other than Yi Chen. Not bad, not bad. This saves me a lot of trouble. Just as Yi Chen finished thinking, Zhen Jiang, Zhen Tua, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong looked at each other. Then, they all stepped forward and bowed to Yi Chen. Zhen Jiang, Zhen Ta, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong, please accept us, my lord. Ding. First-rate historical beauties Zhen Jiang, Zhen Ta, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong wish to acknowledge you as their master. Will you accept? Hearing the system's notification, Yi Chen couldn't help but smirk. F***CK. How could he refuse? Thinking of this, Yi Chen made his choice without hesitation. Accept. Ding. Congratulations to player Yi Chen for obtaining the loyalty of first-rate historical beauties Zhen Jiang, Zhen Tua, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong. After the system's notification ended, Yi Chen chuckled and nodded. Then he said, from now on, I'll get along well with me Chan Wan, Zhao Yu, Kan Mi Zhen, and Wana. Hearing this, Zhen Jiang, Zhen Tua, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong were all stunned. Then, they covered their mouths and looked at Yi Chen in surprise. Yi Chen's meaning was clear. How could they not understand? This was telling them that they had also become Yi Chen's women. However, they had to remember one thing, which was that they had to have peace in their homes. To put it simply, they had to get along well with Chan Wan, Zhao Yu, Kai Mi Zhen, and Huang Wan. They couldn't fight. To Zhen Jiang, Zhen Tua, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong, this wasn't a big deal. They didn't want to fight with others. Their thoughts were simple, which was to become Yi Chen's women. It was because of this that they threw away their women's modesty and took the initiative to acknowledge Yi Chen as their master. Originally, they were still worried. After all, Yi Chen had already taken Zhen Jusei. The possibility of him taking them in was small. However, the result was a pleasant surprise. Yi Chen directly took all four of them in. After regaining their senses, Zhen Jiang, Zhen Ta, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong hurriedly shouted, yes, husband. Seeing this, Zhen Jusei smiled. Zhen Jusei knew that Yi Chen had a lot of women. However, she didn't dislike this. In this era, it was normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. The more capable a person was, the more wives and concubines they had. Even Zhen Jusei's father had 6 concubines. Zhen Jusei naturally wouldn't have any complaints just because Yi Chen had a lot of women. Now that her 4 sisters were going to follow Yi Chen, Zhen Jusei wasn't jealous. Instead, she was happy because she had a good relationship with her 4 sisters. Now that they were going to follow Yi Chen, Zhen Jusei naturally wanted to see them. Moreover, in this way, Zhen Jusei wouldn't feel lonely. Zhen Yi and Madame Zhang looked at each other and smiled at the same time. If one daughter followed Yi Chen, then all 5 daughters would follow Yi Chen. Naturally, the latter would make them happier. In this way, the Zhen clan's position in Yi Chen's territory would be as stable as Mount Tai. Even if they didn't soar, they would be able to stand in the upper echelons. Especially after the 5 daughters gave birth to Yi Chen's sons, the Zhen clan would be able to benefit even more. Of course, Zhen Yi would not use Yi Chen's name to flaunt his prowess, nor would he bully the weak because of this. However, this didn't stop Zhen Yi and Madame Zhang from being happy. At this time, Yi Chen looked at Zhen Jiang, Zhen Tua, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong. Then, he looked at Zhen Yi and handed the Yang Restoration Pill to him. This time, Zhen Yi didn't hesitate and directly took it. Then, he bowed to Yi Chen and said, "Many thanks for the Lord's gift." Chapter 417. Yi Chen chuckled and nodded. At this moment, the world announcement rang out. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for being the first to obtain the loyalty of the historical beauty Zhenjiang. Special reward, 10 million gold taels. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for being the second to obtain the loyalty of the historical beauty Zhen Ta. Special reward, 10 million gold taels. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for being the third to obtain the loyalty of the historical beauty Zhen Dao. Special reward, 10 million gold taels. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for being the fourth to obtain the loyalty of the historical beauty Zhen Rong. Special reward, 10 million gold taels. The world announcement rang out 3 times in a row, instantly causing the already lively world channel to explode. F*CK. F*CK. This bastard Yi Chun. Is he trying to defy the heavens? F*CK. Beautiful sisters, and 5 of them at that. He's taking all of them. F*CK. Are you kidding me? Others haven't even taken in a single historical beauty yet, but Yi Chun is already taking in beautiful sisters. F*CK. Is there any justice in this world? Yi Chun, it's fine for a man to be lustful, but aren't you afraid that you'll have a kidney deficiency? Taking in so many historical beauties, you'll be punished by the heavens. That's right, that's right. Can you even take in so many historical beauties? What if you have a kidney deficiency and can't be lustful? That would be such a waste. Fools be envious, be jealous. Let me tell you, it's useless. Boss Yi Chun is the best. No matter how much you envy him, it's useless. You can only watch. Ha ha. I'm so sad. Big brother Yi Chun, I'm also a beauty. Take me in. I don't want anything. As long as Big brother Yi Chun is willing, I'll immediately go find Big brother Yi Chun. Me too, me too. Big brother Yi Chun, I'm not bad either. Hurry up and take me in. The world channel was flooded with messages. Yi Chun glanced at them and curled his lips in disdain. Because Yi Chun had taken in Zhenjiang, Zhen Ta, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong, the players kept mocking Yi Chun, saying things like kidney deficiency, etc. They were envious, jealous, and hateful. This was because Zhenjiang, Zhen Ta, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong were the elder sisters of Zhen Exceptional Beauty. Even if they couldn't compare to Exceptional Beauty Zhen, they weren't too far off. Moreover, the world announcement had already stated that the 4 of them were first-rate historical beauties. How could they not be beautiful? How could they not be beautiful? It was also for this reason that the male players were all envious of her. Men, other than gay men, who wouldn't love beautiful women, especially historical beauties recognized by the system, they were all extremely beautiful. There was basically no man who wouldn't be tempted by historical beauties. Unfortunately, they could only be tempted and could not obtain any historical beauties. In order to subdue historical beauties, looks were secondary. The most important thing was strength and status. To Yi Chun, these 2 points were enough to crush all the other players. As for the female players who wanted to become Yi Chun's woman, Yi Chun did not care at all. No matter how beautiful they were, they could not be compared to historical beauties recognized by the system. Moreover, they were players. Just based on their status, Yi Chun could not casually subdue them. Yi Chun did not want to be stabbed by these women when he entered the game world or when he was sleeping. This was not what Yi Chun wanted to see. Thinking up to this point, Yi Chun looked at Zhenjiang, Zhen Ta, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong. He smiled and said, "Don't be afraid later. I'm here." When Zhenjiang, Zhen Ta, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong heard this, they were stunned. They did not know what Yi Chun meant. Just as they were puzzled, Yi Chun raised his right hand, and an ancient golden army character instantly appeared on the ground. The army character was surrounded by golden light, forming a huge golden disc. Inside, small golden runes were constantly moving, and Yi Chun was standing on it. At the same time, the sound of the great Tao could be heard. Seeing this strange scene, Zhen Yi, Madame Zhang, Zhen Zhu, Zhen Jiang, Zhen Tua, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong were all stunned. Not only them, but the soldiers of Zhongshan County on the street were also stunned. They had never seen such a scene before. No matter who it was, they did not understand what Yi Chun was trying to do. However, there was one thing that they knew. That was the Great Han Empire's general of agile cavalry. Yi Chun had extraordinary abilities. In other words, he knew magic. Otherwise, where did the golden army character on the ground come from? At this moment, Yi Chun moved his mind, and a row of heaven-grade weapons appeared in an instant. They were arranged closely together, forming a huge door plank. Yi Chun looked at the door plank, made of weapons, and smiled. Then he pointed at Zhen Jiang, Zhen Ta, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong. The door plank, made of weapons, instantly came to the feet of the four girls. When Zhen Jiang, Zhen Ta, Zhen Dao, and Zhen Rong saw this, they immediately understood what Yi Chun meant. He was asking them to stand on it. Combined with what Yi Chun said before, they suddenly understood why Yi Chun said that. He was going to fly them to Samsara City, because the door plank was under their feet, but it did not touch the ground. It was obvious that the door plank could fly. When the four girls saw this, they looked at each other and smiled. Then, they stood on it without hesitation. When Yi Chun saw this, he smiled and nodded. Then, he carried Zhenju, Sei down from the Pegasus Shao Jin and walked to the door plank made of weapons. Nay. A thunderous neigh sounded instantly. The Pegasus Shao Jin looked at the door plank, under Yi Chun's feet with sparkling eyes. Obviously, it wanted to sit on it. However, it was too big. If it went up, it would definitely squeeze a few people off. Therefore, it only looked at it greedily, but did not do anything. When Yi Chun saw this, he could not help but smile. Then, he said, "Wait here. If there's a chance next time, I'll bring you along." Nay. When Shao Jin heard this, it immediately nodded its head excitedly. Looking at the excited Pegasus Shao Jin, Yi Chun laughed. Then, he looked at Zhen Yi and said, "Hurry up and pack up. Then, we'll head to Samsara City." "Yes, Lord." When Zhen Yi heard this, he immediately recovered from the shock of seeing the door plank. He hurriedly bowed and replied. Yi Chun nodded. Then he looked at Zhen Jiang, Zhen Ta, Zhen Dao, Zhen Rong, and Zhenju Sei. Then he said, "Don't be afraid. I'm here." "Yes, husband." Zhen Jiang, Zhen Ta, Zhen Dao, Zhen Rong, and Zhenju Sei replied in unison. Yi Chun nodded with a smile. Then he used his mind to make the door plank, made of weapons, fly up into the sky. In the next second, it brought Yi Chun, Zhen Jiang, Zhen Ta, Zhen Dao, Zhen Rong, and Zhenju Sei towards Samsara City. When Zhen Yi saw this, he hurriedly bowed in the direction where Yi Chun left. "Congratulations, my lord. Have a safe journey." "Congratulations, my lord. Have a safe journey." The Samsara Legion and the city guards of Zhongshan County bowed respectfully to Yi Chun in the sky. Outside the city, Guan Er, who was watching the busy soldiers, suddenly froze. He looked up at the sky. In the next second, Guan Er exclaimed, That is... Chapter 418. Old Guan, what are you looking at? When Zhang San heard Guan Er's exclamation, he was stunned. He followed Guan Er's gaze and looked towards the sky. In the next second, Zhang San was stunned. Then he shouted, my lord is flying." Zhang He, Chu Yi Gaolan, Gui Yi, and Tian Feng also looked toward the sky. In the next second, everyone was stunned. They would never have thought that their lord, Yi Chun, could actually control soldiers to fly. They now knew that Yi Chun would use the Vermilion Bird Battle Formation with the Samsara Legion. Once the Vermilion Bird Battle Formation was used, Yi Chun would be able to fly with the Samsara troop. But that was with the help of the Vermilion Bird Battle Formation. But now, Yi Chun could use the Vermilion Bird Battle Formation. This time, Yi Chun was flying with the 5 girls. As Yi Chun's disciples, how could Yi, Guan Er, Zhang San, Zhang He, Chu Yi, Gaolan, and Tian Feng not be shocked? In the distance, the players who were waiting for Yi Chun to set off once again were discussing amongst themselves. Suddenly, someone was stunned. Then he shouted, "What the F asterisk CK? What the F asterisk CK? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? I see someone flying. Where?" Soon, all the players looked up at the sky. Not long after, cries of surprise rang out. What the F asterisk CK? It's real. Someone is really flying. Isn't this the Three Kingdoms? How can they fly? I'm also confused. This isn't the celestial realm. How can they fly? That's Boss Yi-chun. Look, that's Yi-chun. What the F asterisk CK? It really is Yi-chun. I didn't expect Boss Yi-chun to be able to fly. What realm is this? It must be very high. Otherwise, how could Boss Yi-chun be able to fly? It looks like those people's speculations were true. In this world, it's possible to become an immortal, whether it's a human or devil. Doesn't this mean that we can also live forever in the future? Of course, but there's a prerequisite. You have to live until then. The players fell silent. What this player said was a fact that they had no choice but to face. The real world was going to be unsafe soon. When that time came, it would be really difficult to survive. This was because once the safe zone attribute of the safe city disappeared, the demons would not be able to stop them. Based on the demons' penchant for eating humans, they would definitely attack the humans. And that was the problem that all players were about to face. After a moment of silence, a player gritted his teeth and shouted, "Let's go. I made up my mind. I don't care if Boss Yi-chun accepts underlings or not. I'm going to Samsara City in the real world. It's 100% the safest place in the real world. But Boss Yi-chun doesn't accept any underlings. Even if we can escape from the demon clan, we can't enter Samsara City in the real world. It doesn't matter if we're outside the city." After all, Boss Yi-chun's place is safer than the other lords, and we don't have to worry about being bullied. Have you thought about it? If Boss Yi-chun doesn't allow us to get within 100 miles of Samsara City, what should we do? This can't be. Boss Yi-chun isn't that cruel, right? Boss Yi-chun has always maintained that he doesn't accept underlings. I'm afraid this time is no exception. Then what should we do? Should we just wait for the safety attribute of the safe city to disappear and wait to be killed by the demon clan? There was a moment of silence. The players clearly knew Yi-chun's way of dealing with people. Otherwise, they wouldn't have said that. Not long after, someone clenched his fists and said, "It's safer than other places." That's still safer than other places. Think about Boss Yi-chun's strength. In reality, there are no demons around Samsara City. Even if there are, Boss Yi-chun will kill them all quickly. Yi-chun won't allow the demon clan members to wander around Samsara City. Therefore, even if Boss Yi-chun allows us to stay 100 miles away from Samsara City, it's still safer than the city we're in now. As soon as this person finished his sentence, the gamers looked excited. Because this person was right. In the real world, the Samsara City was 100% safer than anywhere else. Even if the lords built their territories and built tall walls, they might not be able to defend against the demon clan's attack. Even if they could, they would have to sacrifice their lives to defend against the demon clan. But in Yi-chun's city, it was completely different. Yi-chun was the most powerful person in the human clan. He was so powerful that he could even fly. Moreover, he was so powerful that no one could stop him. As long as they followed Yi-chun, they wouldn't have to worry about these things. Even if Yi-chun didn't allow them to get close to Samsara City, they would still be safer than staying in the city they were in now. Thinking of this, the players nodded their heads and started discussing enthusiastically. That's right. Let's do it. As long as we can reach Samsara City in the real world, even if it's nearby, it'll be safer than where we are now. That's right. Let's all report our locations. If we're in the same safe city, we'll travel together. That way, we'll have a higher chance of reaching Samsara City. I'm in the capital city. I'm in Magic City. While the players were discussing fervently, a shout suddenly rang out. "Long live the Lord! Long live the Lord! Long live the Lord!" Millions of people shouted loudly, their voices shaking the sky. The army of Samsara City saw that it was Yi-chun who was flying on a sword. They were all very excited. Flying was the dream of many people. However, they could only dream about it. But now, their lord, Yi-chun, had demonstrated the ability to fly. How could the soldiers of Samsara City not be excited? How could they not be? How could they not be excited? To them, Their lord could do what others couldn't. He was unparalleled in the world. They were proud to be soldiers of Samsara City. They were proud to follow Yichun. In the sky, Yichun used the army formula to control the door made of weapons. He brought Zhenjiang, Zhenta, Zhendao, Zhenrong, and Jinju towards Samsara City at an extremely fast speed. However, Yichun, Zhenjiang, Zhenta, Zhendao, Zhenrong, and Jinju weren't affected by the wind at all. This was because after Yichun flew high in the sky, he summoned the Fire Spirit Pearl. He activated the Fire Spirit Pearl and formed a shield of light. The wind couldn't blow in at all. Zhenjiang, Zhenta, Zhendao, Zhenrong, and Jinju looked at the scenery on the ground and shouted excitedly. They didn't expect to be able to fly one day. Although this was under Yichun's control, it didn't affect their excitement. Looking at the 5 excited girls, Yichun's lips curled. He moved his sword finger, and the speed of his flight increased again. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.